everybody.
Hello.
Hi, folks.
Good to see
Who've we
you
got?
guys.
Alex, Mohammed, Tanya, Tim, Mike, and someone called APG. Who are they?
There's
I don't know.
Alex, who works with Aviator Tony, Jeff, asking when you're going to be available for their podcast
Oh.
in the chat room.
Well,
Later on tonight, I'd say.
Hi, Hall Boxes. Hi.
I just, whenever you have a time, just let me know.
And he'll make sure he's got a trip.
My schedule, though, I guess I should probably mention that in the getting to know us
in
today.
case they're
It's
looking
like,
at the calendar.
yeah, if you're looking at for where I'm going to be flying next month, I don't even know yet. So
I can.
Yeah. Let's see here.
He's doing something new. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. We're going to have to probably tell Roger to sort of say you're just, we don't
somewhere in the United States.
Just cruising.
You got to let
Just
me know where you
around.
are, though, Jeff. I need to know where you
Okay,
are at all times.
I'll let you know.
That.
I'll let you know.
Hi, Mohammed.
All right. She's probably not going to be here with us, so I'll gray that out.
Oh, got an unopened beer here, getting warm. What am I doing?
No.
Oh, no.
No.
Cheers, everybody.
What's wrong with you?
Cheers, Jeff.
I don't know.
Here's
Weird.
my cranberry juice. Cheers.
Cheers. And nothing. I have a bare refrigerator,
Oh,
and not the mammal kind.
That's good. Sounds good, Alex. Send an email over. We'll work it out.
Oh, why did that not?
Hi, Super Fred.
As long as you haven't got a bear behind.
As far as you know, no,
Just
I don't.
stay sitting down.
It's possible, though.
Hi, Poppy. Come here. Here, Poppy. Say hi. Here you go.
Oh, hi, puppy.
There's Poppy, everybody.
Poppy. 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 Okay, Alex. So is Alex like the Liz of your show?
Squawk Ident.
Squawk Ident?
Oh, we've got representatives from Abu Dhabi and Baghdad.
And Delaware.
Wow.
Super driver.
And Indiana.
Super Fred drivers. Oh, yeah.
6-string flyboy. I guess that means a guitar player and pilot.
Yeah. Hi, 6-string
Indiana?
flyboy.
Oh, Alex. Oh, God, no. Well, wouldn't be so bad to be the Liz of Squawk Ident.
Yeah. I think it's a pretty good
That's
gig,
a compliment.
actually. Yeah. Works for me. How close are we getting going?
Well,
And I'm getting wet. I need to change my background. It's raining out here.
Okay. I was wondering where that was going.
well, I guess that's better than saying something else.
Yes.
I could say lots of things.
I know you could.
No, Alex is just saying that he knows Tony's
with his
been
schedule,
wanting to
Liz.
get you on the show, Jeff.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I mean, so I don't know.
Maybe it'll turn into
I would love to, but I don't know what my schedle.
to be
Pretty
honest,
much.
To be honest, Alex, getting him on this show is a bit of a challenge. So
I'm just too busy for this stuff.
I know you need to retire.
I do need to retire.
Don't retire. You'll have less time.
Oh, okay.
That's the problem with retirement.
Yeah.
Yes, private pilot and amateur living room musician, 6-string flyboy. Sounds
Cool.
good.
Very nice. Glad to see you.
Welcome.
Welcome. Okay. Yeah, so next month, the reason why I say I don't really know what my schedule is next month is because I don't really know what my schedule is next month. Because I've dropped all my trips and I'm just going to be, I kind of put myself on sort of like a reserve, like a senior reserve status, and I'm just going to pick up flying as I go throughout the month, see how that works out.
Going to be interesting. Hi,
Yeah,
Gabby.
it will be interesting.
From Abu Dhabi.
Terrifies me, actually.
Someone told me a joke recently, with the punchline of which is Abba Dabby Doo.
Oh, yeah. I
Something to
know
do with
that.
the Flintstones
Yeah,
and
exactly. I know that one. I told.
oh
Do you want to go out, Poppy?
It's a great punchline.
yeah, it is.
I'll be
It
right
is.
back.
I can't remember
Okay.
the damn joke though.
That's my problem. I hear a joke and I can either remember the setup and not the punchline, or I can remember the punchline and not the setup, but I can't get
Yeah.
both of those elements together. So I'm a
Yeah.
horrible joke teller. Horrible.
Oh, well,
Really am.
that's okay.
I love listening to jokes though and laughing.
Well, we all like laughing, and laughing is the best medicine.
It is. And oxycodone.
I have to back away so you can see my T-shirt.
Airbus. Yay. My favorite airplane.
Okay, I'm back.
Welcome. Welcome back. Bernie. Hello, Victoria Cooley. Cooley from Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh.
I don't go to Pittsburgh anymore. The 757 guys are doing almost all the flying
That's a
that we were
big
doing on the
plane.
Mad Dog now is being done by 757s.
Really?
And,
That's
yeah.
a lot more capacity, isn't it?
Yeah, I think they're like 170 passengers, something like that. 160, 170, maybe even more. I don't know. Depends on the model, I guess. We have that.
Alex is a first officer on a regional airline,
Cool.
so that's why he's a busy guy
Oh yeah. Okay, I understand now. Yeah.
with
Sandpiper.
Sandpiper.
I think I know what that is,
Oh,
but I'm not sure.
there's Tim Van Ram. has
Well
the
done,
joke.
Tim.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tim sussed it.
Yeah.
But Abba Dabba Doo.
There you go. Quick, gotta memorize that, Jeffy. Tell it to your first officer.
I'm not going to remember it. I mean, 5 minutes from now, I won't even remember we talked about this.
Oh dear.
Haven't seen El
yes.
Pilato. Gubby, not yet. Anyway, I don't know if he's
Nice to be
coming.
between this international audience. Yes.
It is cool. You're quite right.
It's
It
the
is.
It's
It's
the
amazing,
timing
actually.
because we're a bit earlier today. Most of you people are in bed by the time we're starting over here usually.
Well, do you suppose? So how are the mic levels? Everybody, everything okay?
Yeah, we don't have Micah or Paul.
But we
I
have-
still think
for
Liz
Hagen.
is
Oh,
a
we've
bit
got,
faint.
We've got Mike Kuipers.
Is she? Oh, she's sitting upright though.
I
I
am.
know, but
Got my face right in the mic.
have you no more gain available,
Well, I do, but
so you don't have to swallow the mic?
now
Up
I'm
a
up at
little
the
bit.
top of the gain. That's
Okay. Oh yeah, you're at the top of your game and game.
it. Yeah, the end game. Yeah, exactly.
Ooh,
Yeah, that's good. That's
yeah,
good.
watch out for
Okay.
Okay. Let's see. We'll check. See how Roger's sound is.
You're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show.
The view from our side of the cockpit door.
WAPG. It's the airline pilot guy.
Little
Airline-
hot. A little
Yeah,
hot.
it's a little,
Little hot.
shouty.
A little
Okay.
hot. Not a
So
lot, but a
that
little hot.
I've determined that this nice little mixing console thing with the faders has no effect on it. So I just
So you're gonna throw it
I
away?
just reduced the level of my computer audio output. So let me see if that did anything.
You're listening to
Oh,
the
it's too late,
Airline
Alex.
Pilot
I'm
Guy Show.
completely
The
offended.
view
that you
from
didn't
our
ask me
side of the
earlier.
cockpit door.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good. Hey, there, Nick, you're in demand over at Squawk Ident too. They
Yeah,
want
I
to
know. I
interview
say
you.
it's too late. I'm already too offended. The fact that you asked
Oh,
Jeff
now
first.
Nick's offended. Where does he send his
You haven't got-
email?
You won't have anybody soon.
Hi, Donna Rose.
You know what,
Love to.
Nick? You can go first if you'd like. Doesn't hurt my
No,
feelings.
thanks. No, there you go. After
We
you.
could go. We can be on the
After
show
you.
together. That would be fun.
Oh no, that would be cooler.
Yeah. Fly.
Two
what
for
was
the price of one.
Why don't you see how that flies
Fly
with
United.
the boss?
Okay, I'm ready. Are you ready?
I am ready.
I've been ready for like 45 minutes, but don't worry about it.
No, come on. 45 minutes.
He's just a little bitter and
All
twisted.
right, 40 minutes.
Okay.
Oh, a little bit.
No, Liz and I were here long before you showed up.
That's true.
Mind you, I didn't have my mic
Which
plugged in,
makes
but I
me
was
wonder
here.
why on earth we're still waiting.
Okay, shut up and here we go.
You're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show.
The view from our side of the cockpit door.
WAPG. It's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Airline Pilot Guy, episode 563.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Hello, you're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show, the view from our side of the cockpit door. With your host, Captain Jeff, broadcasting live from Studio 1A at APG headquarters in Roswell, Georgia. Today's show is recorded on the 30th of March, 2023.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy. Get your ride as he's flying by with the Airline Pilot Guy.
In today's episode, a Southwest flight takes off over an ambulance crossing the runway. An off-duty pilot from another airline fills in after a Southwest captain takes ill. More news, your feedback, and today's plane tale from one of the old pilot's RAF forms. So get all settled in. Tray tables and seat backs in the upright and lock positions. Electronic devices powered on. I'm Radio Roger, and Flight 563 is ready for pushback.
Thank you, Radio Roger. He's an award-winning TV and radio reporter, currently at the number one all-news station in the nation, 1010 Wins on 92.3 FM in
New York City.
Welcome to the Airline Pilot Guy Show. It's an aviation podcast covering the latest in aviation news and answering your great questions, even the not-so-great ones. I'm Captain Jeff, a pilot at a major legacy airline based somewhere in the U.S. of A. And joining me from his studio,
in Hartford, Hereford, and Hampshire.
professional photographer, former RAF fighter pilot, retired Airbus A330, A340 captain for Virgin Atlantic Airways. It's Captain Nick.
Hi there, Jeff. Spring has sprung 10 days ago, apparently, but tomorrow we're expecting one of your second-hand hurricanes to come across the country. So,
Huh?
bleh.
It's not even hurricane season. What are you talking about?
Well, it came from your way. All our weather comes from America.
Okay.
Come.
Also, joining us from a place to stand and a place to grow and a place for snow. A retired financier, an aviation enthusiast, spreadsheet master, and our producer, it's Liz Piper.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, we get all our weather from the States too, Nick. I know how you're feeling.
Yeah, I know. It's
Well, wait a
tedious, isn't it?
minute. We get our weather from you guys up in Canada.
Cool Canadian air, I know. Anyway,
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, well, that's the
the-
best kind of weather.
have a good show, you guys.
Thanks,
Bye.
Liz. We'll hear you in the control room, and we're going to go now directly to some aviation news.
Stand by for news.
Okay, we talked about this after it happened on March 3rd, 2023. No, that's a preliminary report. When did this thing happen? Did it really? Okay.
I think you got it right. I
Oh,
think it
heck.
was
Okay.
third.
Well, I'm wrong at all that stuff I just said. So just pretend that you didn't hear it.
Sure.
Okay, here we go. Take two. We're going to start off with a preliminary report on a in-flight upset on a business jet that occurred on the 3rd of March of this year. And let's see, let me tell you a little bit about what the preliminary report has revealed. On March 3rd, 2023, about 1600 Eastern Standard Time, a Bombardier BD-100 1A10, a Challenger 300, November 300 Echo Romeo was involved in an accident while en route from Dillint Hopkins Airport, Keene, New Hampshire, to Leesburg Executive Airport in Leesburg, Virginia. The flight diverted to Bradley International Airport in Windsor Locks, Connecticut. One passenger was fatally injured. The two airline transport pilots and two other passengers were not injured. The airplane was not damaged and was operated as a personal flight under the provisions of Title 14 Code of Federal Regulations, Part 91. The flight crew reported that after a routine pre-flight inspection, engine start, and taxi for departure, a takeoff was initiated. The second in command reported that during the takeoff roll on runway 2, the airplane accelerated normally. However, he observed that the right primary flight display airspeed indicator miscompared to the left side airspeed indicator, and aborted takeoff was performed. The pilot in command slowed the airplane without issue and exited the runway onto a taxiway. The left engine was shut down. The second in command opened the main cabin door, walked to the front of the airplane, where he subsequently observed that the red pitot probe cover remained installed on the right side pitot probe. Not a very good pre-flight inspection, apparently. The second in command removed the cover, did not see any damage to the probe, and returned to the cockpit. The pilot in command restarted the left engine, probably said some choice words to the co-pilot, and then resumed and the taxi to runway 2. Shortly after the left engine was started, the crew reported that an engine indicating and crew alerting system, or ICAS, advisory message of rudder limiter fault enunciated. The pilot in command reported that he attempted 2 ground avionics stall tests to clear the message, as he had received this advisory message in past ground operations. However, the tests did not clear the enunciation. The flight was continued, given that the message was an advisory and not a caution or warning. Interesting. The flight crew further reported that during the second takeoff, the acceleration was normal. However, the second in command, the co-pilot, noticed that the V speeds were not set. The second in command called V1 and rotate at 116 knots from memory, and the pilot in command entered the climb without issue. As the initial climb and turn on course progressed, the pilot in command reported that the autopilot was engaged. They continued to climb to 6,000 feet and were subsequently cleared to flight level 240. The flight crew reported that around 6,000 feet they observed multiple ICAS caution messages. The crew recalled ICAS messages of AP stab trim fail, which is autopilot stabilizer trim failure, Mach trim fail, and autopilot holding nose down. Neither crew member could recall exactly what order the ICAS messages were presented. They also reported that additional ICAS messages may have been enunciated. Well, lots of stuff going on their ICAS panel. The pilot in command asked the second in command to refer to the Quick Reference Handbook. The SIC, via an electronic flight bag, an iPad, located the Quick Reference card. I don't know why they don't have a card, but the card is in the iPad EFB, and the primary stab trim fail checklist he referred to on the Quick Reference card. The SIC visually showed the pilot in command the checklist. They both agreed to execute the checklist. The first action on the checklist was to move the stabilizer trim switch, the stab trim, located on the center console, from primary to off. The second in command read the checklist item aloud, and he subsequently moved the switch to off. Remember, the autopilot's still engaged at this point. As soon as the switch position was moved, the airplane abruptly pitched up. The pilot in command reported that his left hand was on the flight controls and his right hand was guarding the right side of the flight controls. He immediately, with both hands, regained control of the airplane in what he estimated to be a few seconds after the airplane's pitch oscillated up and down. During the oscillations, the pilot in command instructed the second in command to move the stab trim switch back to the primary position, which the SIC accomplished. The PIC reported that preceding the rapid pitch event, the autopilot was on, and he expected that once the stab trim switch was turned off, that the autopilot would disconnect, which it did. I don't know why he didn't disconnect it before he moved that. Well, anyway, the PIC reported that he had no problem manually flying the airplane after the in-flight upset, nor did he experience any abnormalities trimming the airplane using the manual pitch trim switch located on the control column at any point during the flight. Shortly after the in-flight upset, the flight crew were alerted by a passenger that another passenger had been injured. The SIC exited the cockpit to check on the passenger and to provide medical attention for a short period of time. He subsequently informed the pilot in command that there was a medical emergency and that they needed to land. The flight crew informed air traffic control of the medical event and began a diversion to BDL. The PIC did not re-engage the autopilot for the remainder of the flight. After landing, the airplane taxied to the ramp where an ambulance was waiting. Paramedics entered the airplane and subsequently transported the injured passenger to a nearby hospital. The passenger succumbed to her injuries later in the day at the hospital. The flight crew reported that they did not experience any remarkable turbulence during the flight, nor during the time immediately surrounding the in-flight upset event. According to preliminary data recovered from the airplane's flight data recorder, the airplane during the first takeoff attempt reached a maximum airspeed of 104 knots, which was displayed on the captain's airspeed indicator, and 2 knots on the right PFD airspeed indicator. Yeah, there's quite a discrepancy there. No significant difference in airspeed was observed in the data for the remainder of the flight following the SIC's removal of the pitot probe cover. Throughout the initial climb, multiple pilot-commanded manual pitch trim inputs and corresponding movements from the horizontal stab were observed. During the climb, the preliminary FDR data showed that the autopilot had been engaged and disengaged 3 separate instances. With each autopilot engagement, an immediate master caution was enunciated. The flight data recorder does not record specific ICAS caution messages. The autopilot disconnected in the first 2 instances after the manual pilot pitch trim was activated, and small pitch oscillations were observed after the disengagement. The autopilot was re-engaged for the final time at 6,230 feet and remained on until reaching 22,780 feet MSL. The airplane's airspeed had increased from 238 knots to 274 knots in this segment of the climb. Immediately preceding the in-flight upset event, the autopilot abnormal disconnect parameter was activated, and no manual pitch trim inputs were recorded. The data was consistent with flight crew's report that the stab trim switch was moved from primary to off, which resulted in the autopilot disengaging. All right, so here we go. The airplane immediately pitched up to about 11 degrees, reached a vertical acceleration of about plus 3.8 Gs.
Ouch.
That's just shy of 4 G. That's a lot. The airplane subsequently entered a negative vertical acceleration to about minus 2.3 G.
Wow.
Again, that's probably getting very close to the structural limits of this jet. The airplane pitched up again to about 20 degrees, and a vertical acceleration of plus 4.2 Gs was recorded. Okay, so it was even more than the first time.
So you've gone from -2 to plus 4.2.
Yeah.
I mean,
Almost 6 G of change.
Yep.
The stall protection stick pusher activated during this pitch up. Subsequently, vertical acceleration lowered to about plus 2.2 G, which is still a lot for a transport category airplane, which was followed by a cutout of flight data recorder data. The FDR and cockpit voice recorder were equipped with an impact switch, G switch. I guess what that means is in order to protect the data, they have a switch on there that if excessive G forces are recorded, it protects itself because it probably thinks it's just crashed.
Yeah, absolutely.
The CVR continued to record for an additional 10 minutes as it was equipped with a backup power supply. However, the CVR also stopped recording data prior to landing at Bradley. A representative with the Executive Flight Services, EFS LLC, reported that they managed the accident airplane, and employed the flight crew. They said that the flight was operated as a non-revenue Part 91 flight operated by the owner of the airplane, Connection LLC. According to Federal Aviation Administration Airman records, the pilot in command held an airline transport pilot certificate and held a pilot in command type rating in the accident airplane, in addition to the other type ratings he held. EFS reported that the PIC had accumulated 5,061 total flight hours and 88 hours in the accident make and model. The SIC held an airline transport pilot certificate and held a PIC rating in the accident airplane as well, in addition to other type ratings. EFS reported that the SIC had accumulated 8,025 total flight hours, 78 in the accident make and model. In October 2022, both pilots completed initial ground and simulator training and earned their PIC type ratings in the Challenger 300. Wow. Okay, so one of the reasons why this was kind of a high visibility kind of an accident was the fact that the lady that succumbed to her injuries, who was killed in this accident or in-flight upset, was a former White House staffer and worked for, I think, both the Obama and Clinton administrations. Liz, exactly what was her? Okay, she's going to look that up for us. Anyway, she was, a lot of people knew her in the White House community, and yeah, and she was with her husband and one of their sons, and they, as I said, didn't have any major injuries at all from this in-flight upset, but apparently she wasn't. I'm assuming she probably wasn't belted in and got flung about. I mean, if you're not connected to the airplane and you experience plus 3.8, minus 2.3, plus 4.2, I mean, that's going to be tough to, especially if you hit things on the way up and down. That's going to be hard to live through, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's not just, I mean, the height of the cabin is what, 5 feet, I guess, probably in one of these, perhaps 6 feet if you're in the middle of it. It's not just falling 6 feet, but it's falling 6 feet at 6 times gravity. So you've been held up, or at least 4 times gravity. You've been held up, pushed up to the ceiling with the negative G, and then smacked down 4 times faster than you would normally fall. So that kind of impact is going to do a lot of damage. It's going to cause a lot of trauma.
Yeah.
Very sad.
She was a senior advisor for the State Department. And when I was reading this preliminary report, I'm thinking, okay, they did a couple things that weren't great. Well, one of the things they did do well was the pilots, was that as they were taking off, they did the check. We always talk about calling out certain things during the takeoff roll. And one of those things, depending on the airplane, I think on the Airbus, it's 100 knots. On most of all the airplanes that I've flown, transport category, 80 knots is the number. And what you're doing is you're ensuring that the pedostatic instrumentation is working properly, and you have redundant systems. You're also making sure that both systems are very similar in readings. And so when we call out 80 knots on my jet, that's kind of a cue for the other pilot to look down, make sure that that's what they're indicating as well, so that we have good pedostatic systems before we take the airplane into the air. And they did that. They did that well. The second in command noted that the airspeed on his side was not indicating anything, basically 2 knots, and so called out appropriately for an abort. But it just also reveals that their pre-flight inspection wasn't as, the attention to detail wasn't as great as it should have been.
And also, the faults they had later on make me think that I wonder if they cleared all the problems that this airspeed mismatch had occurred. Either
Probably
some
not.
of them were flagged up in the flight control system or the avionics or whatever it is that you get on one of these aircraft. And the other thing was that they were obviously perhaps a bit thrown by it because they didn't prep the airplane sufficiently well the second time, because they forgot to put in the V speeds, which is quite it's quite a sin, because for Jeff and I flying proper airliners, that's or bigger airliners, that really is a vital check. You've got to make sure you have all those, and it's part of our checklist to make sure that we have correctly indicating V speeds before we even start taxiing,
Right.
having entered all the data.
Yep.
So I'm thinking that either they were just making a lot of mistakes, which could be unusual, but could be indicative of something, or they were a bit thrown by what had previously occurred, and they weren't disciplining themselves to go, right, let's start all over again,
Right.
and right from word go and make sure that this time we do everything correctly.
Mhm.
And they obviously didn't quite, decide to do that just to make sure that they were going to dot all the I's and cross all the T's. So that's uncomfortable.
I agree.
The thing that makes me think that there might have still been a residual issue with the airspeed is that the failures they were getting all seem airspeed related.
Mhm.
Certainly rudder limiter fault they got. That is usually something that prevents you from applying large amounts of rudder at high airspeed. so that you don't damage the rudder, the fin, or just over control the airplane. So as you accelerate, the amount of rudder travel you have available to you is reduced, and that's done on an airspeed switch usually, or an airspeed sensor. And the fact they got that fault made me think, well, I wonder if that airspeed sensor isn't working properly. And there was something else. Also, yeah, the two issues they had with stab trim fail, autopilot stab trim fail, and Mac trim fail. They're also speed related issues in that the stabulator, the big horizontal slab at the back, isn't now moving in accordance with your trim. And if it's got an automatic trimming system on this aircraft, I don't know if it does or not, then that will be trimmed out according to a schedule. Whether that is airspeed related or not, I don't know. But that, I think, gives us a clue as to what happened when the autopilot disconnected.
Right. And even that message that I've never seen before, but apparently is on this jet, that the autopilot is holding nose down. That's a clue right there that obviously there's something going on with the pitch trim. The pitch trim is not properly set, and the autopilot's doing everything it can with its available authority to keep the nose down because it's trying to pitch up. That should have been like the clue that, hey,
that should have been a red flag for me.
Disconnects, it's going to be a wild ride.
This is not an unheard of situation. We know quite a few accidents where the elevator on the back of the stabilizer is holding the aircraft in level flight or in its correct attitude, because the stabilizer, the great big all moving tailplane, is in the wrong position. And when that elevator, autopilot holding that elevator, finally releases it, there's a huge trim change, which is what occurred, which caused that enormous pitch up of 10, 11 degrees and 3.8 G or whatever it was. So yeah, you're right, Jeff. That should have been, oh, what the hell is this? What is going on here? Let's, what can we do? And if there's not a checklist for it, then just slow the aircraft down to a moderate speed, so that they were doing 280 something knots by that point, weren't they? 200.
Yeah. 278 or something. 274.
Yeah, they were beetling along in the climb. That's going to, you slow the aircraft down so that the stab has less aerodynamic effect. You're going to get a smaller pitch change when you release it.
Yeah.
And also, I was curious, they looked for something on their QRH, a checklist to run, and the one they ran, I don't think really was hit the nail on the head. They ran one for a pitch stab trim fail. That's the checklist they ran. None of the cautions they had was for a pitch stab trim fail. Might have been. They hopefully know their aircraft well. They haven't long since they did all their tech stuff and simulators, and that might. But one wonders if there was a more specific checklist for the failures that they had actually had indicated.
Yeah, and going back to the whole nexus of this, the fact that they had the pitot tube covered and then they had to abort the takeoff, and then they, as you said, they're probably rushed and hurried and probably embarrassed that they had to abort the takeoff because they did something really stupid like forgetting to remove one of the covers, and okay, let's just get this thing going, right away here and get on with it, and not slowing down and going, okay, wait a minute, what just happened? What could have been affected by all of this? And in today's modern airplanes and modern avionics and FMS boxes and everything else, you're almost better off just going back to the ramp and shutting everything down, and then just starting everything back up from the very beginning, because these systems are very sophisticated and they're very dependent upon various things happening at certain points. And when something is like when the wrench is thrown into the mix and something goes wrong, it's going to have some effects that are residual effects that are happening.
Absolutely. And UH Blackhawk has, I think, highlighted it. We sort of alluded to it.
Yeah.
Some sort of data concentrator failure that might have held those a problem since they had that S-speed mismatch and
Right.
didn't fix itself. Sometimes if you shut the airplane completely down and then start it up again, that will fix these things. But I don't know if they got that far.
And Victoria makes a good point in our live audience. Why didn't they ensure that the passengers were seated and belted prior to turning off the autopilot, given the pitch trim fault? I mean, that's a very good question. I mean, and now I would be like, that would be one of the things on my mind is like, okay, something's wrong. The airplane's trying to counter something going on with the pitch trim system. Let's just make sure everybody is seated with their seatbelts fastened before I attempt to turn the autopilot off and we fix this situation.
Yeah. I think if you had these problems in a simulator and you put the seatbelt signs on or leant back and shouted through the door, everyone make sure you're strapped in, please. The instructor would be quite impressed. He would say, okay, well done. You're covering all your bases.
Mm-hmm.
You might not have a problem, but if you did, at least you've made sure your passengers are safe and secure.
And as far as the how seatbelts are handled on private aircraft, I don't really know. I mean, I don't know if there are federal aviation regulations that cover this sort of thing, and it didn't sound to me like there was an attendant in the back. It was just the two pilots and the three passengers. I'm not sure what kind of briefing that they give to the passengers before they go, or what. I'm not sure how they communicate with them that they need to be in their seat with their seatbelt fastened at certain points of the flight. It's a good question. Maybe somebody out there knows. Gubby's asking me a question. Does the Mad Dog 717 have a pitch authority warning? We do have a system that if the stab trim is out of trim for a certain amount of time, we get a stab trim light that is warning us that it's either is trying to catch up with what the airplane's doing. Like if you slow down rapidly, sometimes the trim system, if when you have the autopilot on, it's using the lower rate trim system, and sometimes the rate at which the airplane's slowing down, it's hard for the autopilot and the trim system to keep up with it, and it's just kind of a warning to you that it's not quite there yet. It's trying to catch up, and you can hear it. We have oral warnings that after the pitch trim system has been working for a certain length of time, it emits this really obnoxious sounding tone, which I almost don't even hear anymore because I'm so used to hearing it. But unlike some other airplanes like the 727 that I flew, where the manual pitch trim system was actually a big wheel, it's 737, same thing. That's rotating around and it's making kind of a clackety sound. And so it's very obvious when the airplane is trimming. If you have the autopilot on, it's obvious when the autopilot's trimming, and also when you're manually flying, it's obvious when you're activating the pitch trim system because this wheel's going, making. Well, I can't imitate the sound, but it's a distinctive sound. And everybody listening out there who has flown a Boeing that has this kind of a manual trim wheel kind of a system, they know exactly what.
So go kakalaki, kakalaki.
Kind of like kakalaki, kakalaki, kakalaki. Yeah, exactly. Maybe that's how they came up with that term.
Yeah.
Anyway, so there are, but it's not the same sort of system that you've described, Gubby, regarding, like when it reaches a 50% stab trim position, that it yells at you and lets you know that your pitch trim authority is in a way limited. No, not quite the same. All right, Tim Van Ram says, flying in my company's corporate aircraft, they have seatbelt lights that are used during takeoff and landing. I've never seen the light used during flight. Interesting. So obviously that was a preliminary report. They're doing some more investigation on this. Of course, it's in progress, and it'll be interesting to see what they come up with in their final report as far as mistakes made and probable causes and that kind of thing.
Yep.
Liz is talking to me. Go ahead. Oh, that was one thing I forgot to do. Yeah, I can do that. Our friend Micah, main man Micah, is having trouble joining us because one of the staff, dang it, the staff is not doing their job of updating our website page. That's me, actually. I'm supposed to do that. We're at the half-hour mark. Our control room is letting us know, Nick.
Okay. Thanks.
So, okay. Can you, okay, I'm going to leave for a moment so I can get the URL. That's all right. I can get it. It's saying, are you sure you want to leave the broadcast? Yeah, better not.
No,
Okay,
probably
yeah.
not.
If you'll send me the URL, that'd be great. Okay, thanks. Oh, crud. No, I didn't, Nick.
I wondered because normally we're pretty good at doing our checklists.
I got it going now.
Good.
Gosh darn it. More work for me in post.
Oh, well.
Oh, well. It's not the first time that I've forgotten to hit the record button. Okay, thanks.
I blame the producer myself.
Yeah, I know. The producer didn't make sure that we were
Let us
recording.
down. No.
That's right. I'm going to have to deduct your pay again.
You know what? We should go back and start all over again. That was a joke, by the way.
He did?
I didn't mean it.
Oh, no, I wasn't here. I didn't hear what you said because Liz was talking.
All
She
right.
said that somebody used the website URL and, UH Blackhawk did. That's interesting. You mean
I
our
reckon,
website that says airlinepilotguy.com/YouTube? Is that the one that he's talking about? I'm not sure how that worked because I have not updated it. I don't think I did. Let's see. Go on here. Isn't this fascinating, everybody? Talk amongst yourselves, entertain yourselves, of course. Oh, looks like Skype just ended.
Oh, she just obviously got upset.
She finally got
being
tired of it.
criticised And,
Yeah, she
I'm
said,
not having
okay.
any more of this.
Well, yeah, screw you then. I'm out of here. Okay. And let me get this identification number. Copy. And enter it here. Yeah, it's a different number. I have not updated the website address. Paste, save and exit, and 3 different places I gotta insert the new code. There is a way to have a permanent address, except that the downside is that we'd have to make it it has to be a public link. And then, of course, everybody that has been watching us on video for some time, remember the old days when we had this public and we had a lot of trolls that were having fun at our expense. Yeah, so we're not doing that. Okay, so it's all updated now. So somebody can tell Micah that it should work now for him. And then also, Liz, I don't know if you heard me or not, but oh, here we go. Skype is... Hello? No problem. Yeah, things happen. Okay, I'm going to mute on Skype. And I can still hear you, Liz, on your end of the conversation. Oh, that's weird. Oh yeah, look at that. Liz's twin is with us here on StreamYard. Did something happen with your internet or something? Oh, you did the opposite of the swipey thing that Nick does. Nick normally just takes himself out completely.
I actually turn off the broadcast.
Yes, you double swiped, or you swiped the other direction, maybe. Okay, well, we're glad that you're here in multiple instances. All right. Okay. All right. I think that's enough discussion regarding that first news item. And as I said, we'll keep our eyes and ears open, seeing how that develops. And hopefully we'll be able to learn something from it. The next item is from the Aviation Herald. Southwest Airlines Boeing 737-700, registration 212 Whiskey November, performing Flight 471 from Baltimore, Maryland to Chicago O'Hare, was cleared for takeoff from Baltimore's runway 15 right, commenced takeoff at 13:58 local time. A fire and rescue vehicle, an ambulance, was cleared to cross runway 10 and hold short of 15 right at the ARF road. Airport Rescue Firefighting Road, about 5,700 feet, 1,740 meters down runway 15 right. The vehicle, however, read back to cross runway 10 and 15 right. The controller did not correct the readback. The vehicle continued and crossed runway 15 right while the Boeing 737 was in their takeoff run. The Boeing 737 continued the takeoff, became airborne, and continued to destination without further incident. The FAA reported in their safety summit held as a result of other losses of runway separation, listing a total of 8 such occurrences, that the aircraft became airborne just before the intersection where the vehicle was crossing. The distance between aircraft and vehicle had reduced to about 173 feet horizontally. That's close.
Ouch.
By the time the aircraft went past the intersection, the vehicle was already about 170 feet past the runway. Oh, okay. So it had already cleared the runway then. That's what I'm getting from that.
But not by a huge amount.
Not by a huge amount, no. Weather conditions at the time, looks like 7 miles visibility, light rain, low cloud, but it's decent visibility, even though light rain was showing in the METAR. But wow, that was a close one.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not the first time. Of course, wasn't that long ago there was a collision between an aircraft and a firefighting vehicle in similar circumstances.
Yep.
It's not going to be long if we keep on doing this. People keep on forgetting to check the runways visually when they get to them to ensure that they're actually clear, just in case someone has made a mistake. And then you'd have spotted the airplane. But if you're just going to drive around and hope for the best, eventually something's going to happen.
Yeah, and I'm sure that the ambulance probably heard what they were expecting to hear from Tower. And the big critical part of this, and I think in one of our, if we get to it today in the feedback, talks about the importance of communications and the fact that air traffic control is required to listen to the readback, and if the readback is not correctly stated, that the air traffic controller must correct the whatever is not properly read back, because it's critical. And again, maybe the readback is what the controller was expecting to hear from them, and it wasn't. Attention to detail is important in this world of aviation.
We all need to be aware of expectation bias, where we expect to hear something and something comes back and you just assume you heard it correctly, or it was correct when you heard it, without listening to it properly and analyzing what was said and comparing it with what should be said. So
exactly. It's communications is so important, especially in this aviation world. Okay, this one, there was a communication made by the co-pilot to air traffic control, and I'll do the setup here. Well, first of all, this is from NBCnews.com, the major article that we're referring to on this next news item. A Southwest Flight 6013 was headed from Las Vegas to Columbus, Ohio on Wednesday when one of the pilots needed medical attention, according to a spokesperson for Southwest Airlines. And I have some ATC, live ATC.net audio that picks up at the point where there is a problem and the co-pilot is trying to communicate this problem to air traffic control.
Southwest 6013, are you on my frequency yet?
LA Center, Southwest 6013, flight level 320.
Southwest 6013, they finally ship you over. Quick direct to Chow, and when you have a moment, I have some questions.
Okay, for now, direct to Chow, Southwest 6013. Yeah, stand by. Give me just a couple minutes and I'll be right back with you.
No problem. In Southwest 6013, descend at your discretion, maintain flight level 29029, and just maintain 300 knots or greater. It's been mostly smooth so far.
Okay, maintain flight level 290 and 300 knots or greater in the transition, Southwest 6013.
And that's your discretion on the descent.
Okay, I understand. Our discretion on the descent, Southwest 6013. And for Center, Southwest 6013, I'm going to go ahead and declare a medical emergency as well. It's actually the captain that's not doing well, so we need to get him on the ground immediately. So just, yeah, we are an emergency aircraft at this point, Southwest 6013.
Southwest 6013, roger that, and I understand 40 male, it's the captain, incapacitated. Do you have medical personnel on board?
We do. He is alert and attentive right now, but we do have medical personnel on board that is going to check him out.
Roger, and we'll have medical personnel standing by on the ground. When you do have a chance, if you could just tell me what your original destination was and if you have a gate number.
We don't have a gate number at this point. Our original destination was Columbus. We have, let's see, that'd be 143 souls on board, and we currently have, let's call it 4 hours of fuel remaining, Southwest 6013.
Roger, thank you.
Any chance we could get direct to Prino for, actually, let's say, I'll set up for the ILS for 26 right.
Southwest 6013, could direct to Prino.
And I'm sorry, I guess Prino's not on the ILS for 26 right, maybe direct to Condi, final approach fix.
Cleared as requested.
Okay, direct Condi for the 26 right, Southwest 6013. And Center, Southwest 6013, we're just now making that turn direct to Condi.
Southwest 6013, roger. I'll have a decent clearance for you, just a moment, just waiting for another aircraft.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Southwest 6013, descend your discretion, maintain flight level 240.
All right, our discretion, flight level 240, Southwest 6013.
In Southwest 6013, I did pass all that information on. They will have medical personnel standing by on the ground. Contact LA 124.2, let them know if you need anything else.
Okay, 24.2 for Southwest 6013. Do appreciate the help today. Thank you.
You're welcome.
LA Center, Southwest 6013. We're at flight level 290, discretion 240.
Southwest 6013, LA Center, descend and maintain 14,000. You Las Vegas altimeter 2975. You can expect ILS runway 26 left.
Okay, understand. Descend and maintain flight level, 14,000. And can we expect ILS 26 right? We're headed direct to Condi right now.
I'll put that request in with Vegas.
Okay, thank you.
LA 409 Kilo Golf 240.
409 Kilo Golf, LA Center, and Southwest 6013. When able, if you could provide the gate number, that would be helpful.
Yeah, I'm waiting from dispatch right now to get a gate number for Southwest 6013. I'll let you know.
It's kind of busy.
Thank you. Southwest 6013, contact Las Vegas approach 119.77, and let them know your gate number.
Okay, 119.7.
LA Southwest 6013.
Southwest 6013, Vegas.
Different voice.
Correct.
Good morning, sir. I show you 15,000. Oscar is now current at Las Vegas. We have Oscar descending 14,600 to level 14,000. 8 Charlie 1, but we're planning on stopping on the runway and being tucked in at Vegas. Southwest 6013, Roger. Would you like ILS 26 right, or do you want a visual test? ILS 26 right. Delta 6013, when able, clear direct fly. Descend and maintain 9,000. Direct fly and descend 9,000, Southwest 6013. Las Vegas Tower, Southwest 6013, 26 right.
Southwest 6013, Tower, wind 050 at 7, runway 26 right, clear to land.
Clear to land 26 right, Southwest 6013.
Southwest 6013, if you can turn right there, you can go straight into the ramp.
Unable, Southwest 6013, we need to get tugged into the gate.
Can't get off the runway at all?
Negative.
Hey, Tower, can you have him swap to the discrete frequency so we can talk about the conditions of the pilot to see if we can actually go ahead and put an airspace?
All right, Tower, Southwest 6013, we're doing our best here.
6013, if you can go straight in there, if not, just clear the whole line there.
Yeah, we're clear here. We're going to stop the aircraft right here and get tugged in.
Okay, looks like your tail's off the runway. Appreciate that.
No problem.
That's Tower County Mobile 5 is clear. Runway 63, be advised, runway 63 now open.
Hey, Mobile 5, Roger. I'll switch them over to discrete frequency.
Okay. And I think there was some more communication on the discrete frequency, but that was not captured on this live ATC excuse me, recording. You'll note, as I mentioned earlier, that at a certain point, the voice of the co-pilot changed, and that is because apparently there was another, how did they refer to it here?
A credentialed pilot.
Yes, a credentialed pilot kind of went up to the cockpit, or he may have already been in the cockpit. Maybe he was on the jump seat. I don't know. Doesn't really say. But obviously took over radio communications, trying to help out the single pilot at this point of the aircraft, because I think that they had pulled the captain out of the left seat and brought him back to the back to work on him. And Tim Van Ram says that he thinks that he knows what happened here, that the captain had the fish, which is
almost certainly.
Yeah,
yes.
It's not a good thing. A NetJets pilot, Victoria, is saying, yeah, that's what I had heard as well. But it's kind of unusual for something like that to happen. And I can see advantages and disadvantages to having somebody come up that is not specifically qualified on Southwest's 737 procedures and all that kind of stuff. But if you're just sitting there and, like keep your feet off the furniture and don't touch anything except for the microphone, you can talk and help me communicate. I can see that would be a help to the co-pilot here in this situation. I don't know if there are any specific policies preventing something like that or not, but I think as long as you're being helpful, and then I guess at the very end, the reason why the second in command, the co-pilot, said that they couldn't clear the runway and they were planning to get tugged off the runway and to the gate is because on the 737 and a lot of other airplanes, unlike the Airbus, the steering tiller is usually only on the captain's side, on the left side. Now, I guess there are some airplanes that have it installed on both sides, even Boeings that have an arrangement like that. But most of the narrow-body Boeings that I know about, it's only on the left side. So maybe, I don't know, maybe they had a discussion where, hey, you want to try that steering tiller over there, NetJets pilot, and kind of crank that thing over and get us off the runway so they can open up the runway again. Maybe that's how they actually got off the runway. I guess you could use some differential braking and, differential thrust to make a hard right. I think I remember seeing an airport diagram where they pulled off the runway. It wasn't a high-speed turnoff, but it was more of like a 90-degree turnoff. So that would make it a little bit more difficult if you didn't have that steering tiller available.
The last thing you want to do is to actually end up on the grass with a dying captain in the back, or could be dying, and
Yeah.
then you can't get stairs, or you can't drag the aircraft in to where the medical assistance is. It would just be a nightmare if it didn't go 100%, and you would be criticized from dawn to dusk if the guy
Right.
died because you'd let this bloke have a go at taxiing it for the very first time and he hadn't made the corner. So I think he was quite right to do what was probably in his procedures, which is to stop on the runway. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not like he won't have practiced this in the simulator. We regularly used to, the captain would be asked to quietly die in the corner of the simulator, and the first officer would be required to, from all sorts of various stages of flight, sometimes in the middle of takeoff, sometimes in the middle of a go around or something, he would have to take control and bring the aircraft safely back. And often we did it with the captain putting an input in. So you might be climbing away and you'd be asked to discreetly, on your headset, asked to die with some, left bank and a bit of a push down, as if you were having a small seizure. And the first officer would have to grab the controls. And on the Airbus, if the captain went full nose down and the first officer went full nose up, that aircraft would just fly level. So he's got to remember to press the red button on the top of the stick so he gets command of the aircraft and gets full input available to him. So there are lots of things to think about in a very short time if you're given that nasty situation, because it's not the easiest thing to cope with, but they are practiced in it and they're drilled in it and they know how to do it. So this guy sounded very in control of the situation, right on top of it, till they just started to overload him a bit, asking him for things that he wasn't comfortable doing. Do you want to taxi? No, I've told you I'm going to stop on the runway. And then they were asking him again because they're thinking, it'd be really nice if you get off the runway. We can use our runway.
Right.
Not thinking about the pressure he's under. He's doing both jobs now and monitoring a different bloke on the flight deck who's only trying to use the radio or whatever. So
Yeah.
Wrong, I think, of them to try and, ask too much of him.
I agree. And he at first held his guns, or held his position like unable. I told you,
Yeah, very good.
I'm going to stop here. Sorry, that's just the way it is. But apparently, maybe he decided, well, maybe we could do this safely and get it off the runway so they can resume operations on it. But anyway, I think it was well done. As you said, it sounded very much like he was in control of the situation.
Yeah,
and,
he really did. He didn't sound like he was having a problem doing it. It was all very nicely done. And he was able to absorb a lot of information as well as what was going on around him. He was hearing all the instructions clearly and repeating them and obviously flying to them. So it sounded like he was, particularly initially, he was doing very well indeed.
I'm a little disappointed that they didn't ask him to get the latest ATIS broadcast information.
Yeah, I know. Why do they do that? As if he's got time to tune another radio in and go and pick up right down the ATIS while he's doing all this. I'm going, really? You can't read out the ATIS too?
Really?
For heaven's sake.
Yeah, I know. It's one of my pet peeves. But
not surprised, yeah.
Oh, I Hall Boxes in our audience says, just imagine how many flight simmers in that cabin got disappointed that they didn't get picked to help out.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Maybe they didn't know they were there.
Enough problems.
Yeah. Okay. Let's. I'm not going to touch that one, Liz. All right. Let's continue with this next one. We have an NTSB final report, and this is from. I'm not sure what this article is from, but let's see. On October 3rd, 2021, at 10 o'clock Central Daylight Time, a tandem air bike, which is what Liz is showing us now, at least that's what it looks like before it crashes, was destroyed when and we're not laughing at the crash. It just, was destroyed when it was involved in an accident near Warrensburg, Missouri. Both occupants were fatally injured. That's the aftermath. The airplane was operated as a Title 14 Code of Federal Regulations Part 91 instructional flight. The uncertificated pilot who recently purchased the aircraft and a pilot who did not hold a flight instructor certificate as required departed on the accident flight so that the uncertificated pilot could learn to fly the aircraft. The aircraft did not have a required registration and airworthiness certificate. A witness stated that the aircraft wing dropped while turning. It then entered a descent and impacted the ground. The engine continued to operate during the flight. The left wing drop, followed by a descent, was consistent with an aerodynamic stall. Post-accident examination of the flight controls confirmed flight control continuity. Toxicology tests revealed that the front seat uncertificated pilot had high levels of meth, in cavity, blood, and liver, most likely consistent with recent use. Which likely resulted in some impairment. Let's go fly this airplane. The rear seat pilot had a therapeutic level of oxycodone. How do you pronounce that? Codone. In his subclavian blood, as well as a high level in his gastric fluid, with only metabolite in gastric fluids suggesting recent ingestion of the drug. He too was likely impaired to some extent from his use of this drug. Although both pilots were likely impaired by their use of substances, whether that impairment directly contributed to the circumstances of this accident could not be determined. The root issue in this case was the decision by each occupant to get in the aircraft and attempt to fly it when they lacked the skills and qualifications to safely do so. Yeah.
That sums it up nicely.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead. Oh, yeah. I was going to have you play it while I was reading all that. That's all right. So we have a little video of the airplane in action. There we go. Taking the
looks
air
like
bike
a fun little machine.
It does. Yeah.
Yeah. I can see why they call it a
Just
bike.
hit return, Liz. Go back to it and then hit return. I think it should start. No problem.
Because you kind of ride it like a motorcycle, don't you? With the foot either side of the engine.
And there's a seat right behind his. You can't see it in that frame, but when two people are in the airplane, they're almost like right up against each other, touching each other. That's a very, very tight tandem kind of a setup.
Get cold legs, wouldn't you?
Pardon me?
Get cold legs, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I would imagine, but I guess if you don't go up too high, it probably wouldn't get... Let's see, iHall boxes in our live audience. Are the feet controlling the rudder or the spinning of the propeller in this? Well, maybe both. There are rudder pedals there on either side, but your feet are really close to that propeller up there for sure. I mean, literally like maybe 2.5, 3 feet behind that propeller that's spinning. Yikes. But as Captain Nick says, it looks like a fun little thing to fly in. There are no doors or anything on it. It's just a wing and a tail and a motor up front with a propeller, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Nope, not much protection at all. Anyway,
well, lovely for somewhere with a good climate.
Yep, for sure.
And where there aren't drugs freely available.
Yeah, true. All right. Continuing on with this next item from the Chicago Sun-Times. Let's see. United Airlines to fly air taxis to O'Hare beginning in 2025. The first route is planned between the airport and the Illinois Medical District. And here's a picture.
I'm sure they could stick some more propellers on that if they tried.
Maybe. I don't know. How many do you count there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
And one at the back, 7, I think.
I think there are actually more in the back. I was looking at some other photos.
Oh, really?
There are even more propellers in the back of that wing than we can see in this picture. Lots of propellers. Let's see. Beginning in 2025, you'll have a new way to get to and from the airport from downtown. An electric air taxi, the trip between O'Hare and the Illinois Medical District, is expected to take about 10 minutes, according to California-based Archer Aviation, which is partnering with United Airlines. The company announced the service Thursday. The price? An Archer spokesman said that they hope to make the fare competitive with Uber Black, a ride-hailing service that provides luxury vehicles and top-rated drivers to customers. The air taxis are expected to land at Vertiport, Chicago, billed as Chicago's only full-service downtown heliport. The air taxi seats 4 passengers and a single pilot. The taxis are being built at Archer's Covington, Georgia facility.
So married pilots need not apply.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. If you're married, yeah. So sorry, you can't do this
Sounds
service.
discriminatory, but there you go.
Yeah, I do need to. Covington, Georgia is just like on the east, southeast side of Atlanta, and I should check it out. Although I did look it up, Liz, to see if I could see any progress on the facility that they're supposed to be creating, and I looked at Google Maps, and so far, maybe the Google satellite imagery is not up to date, but didn't see any evidence yet of any buildings or anything going on. Yeah, 2025 does seem very, very not very far into the future at all. Be very surprised if they were able to get this thing running in 2025, but we'll see. Single pilot operations. I mean, what could possibly go wrong with only one pilot?
Yeah. I have no idea.
Yep.
Let me think.
Perhaps
they could get one of the Microsoft Flight Sim qualified passengers to fly it instead.
There you go. Artificial intelligence, yeah. Who knows? Chat GPT and Bing AI and all that kind of stuff. I mean, they could handle all that.
Yep.
Okay, from Paddle Your Own Canoe. Oh, I'm so happy we have an article from Paddle Your Own Canoe. 2 Indian pilots suspended after a photo of a full coffee cup balanced on cockpit controls goes viral. 2 pilots for the Indian low-cost airline SpiceJet have been suspended after a photo of a full coffee cup being balanced on the controls in the cockpit went viral. Even a tiny liquid spillage has the potential to affect critical aircraft systems and could prevent a plane from flying correctly. The incident happened as Indian Hindus were celebrating the Festival of Holi, which is sometimes known as the Festival of Colors. The pilots appeared to take part in the celebration by indulging in gujia, an Indian sweet which is typically eaten during Holi. Alongside the gujia was a full paper cup of coffee, both of which were balanced on the center console cockpit controls on a SpiceJet flight from New Delhi to Guwahati in Assam state on March 8th. The photo was shared on social media, their biggest mistake, but it quickly went viral for all the wrong reasons after pilots and air safety professionals around the world reacted with horror to where the coffee cup had been placed. Yeah, many airlines have stringent rules about the management of hot drinks in the cockpit because of the inherent, doesn't have to be a hot drink, because of the inherent risk posed by getting liquids on flight deck controls. Now, Nick, I'm sure your company probably had some strict rules regarding that.
Oh, yeah. If the cabin crew came in, they were only allowed to pass a drink to the pilots around the back of their seats to the outside of the cockpit, so adjacent to the cockpit windows, just in case, even in the act of passing the drink, you got a drop spilled on the center console because, they had a spillage on an aircraft and, sometimes it's just a computer box that fails, or in one case, the engine, an engine shut down because of a short circuit. So that's where all the engine controls are, plus most of the navigation controls and radio controls. So they're not waterproof. It's designed to be a dry environment. So you just don't put drinks anywhere near the damn things. This is just ridiculous, but there you go.
Yeah, that's the first takeaway. Don't put the liquids on that center console. And then the second takeaway is if you do something stupid like that and take a picture of it, don't share it on social media.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. That ends our news segment. Now it's time to get to know us. And we have a little jingle for that. There we go. Time of the show where we kind of get all caught up with what everybody's been up to between
this won't take long, will it? There's only 2
No,
of
it
us.
won't. You have a lot more stuff than I have to talk about, that's for sure.
That's true. I've written a bit down too.
Yeah. Let's see. Since the last show, I was supposed to go out on a trip the day following our last episode recording. However, I was feeling a little bit under the weather and I had taken some medication to help with that. And because I didn't have enough time between the time I stopped taking the medication and the time that the trip was supposed to report, it just didn't work out. So ended up calling in sick for that trip. And then on the weekend, I sort of was able to sing, not very well and not very strongly, but I was there, and I did try, the old college try. And then on Monday morning, Monday through Wednesday, I performed what is likely to be the last time I get to fly with my favorite first officer, Brent. We flew a trip that ended up in Wilmington, North Carolina for a couple of nights, and just got back yesterday. And he is scheduled to go into the simulator training for his captain upgrade on the 10th, Monday, I guess a week from Monday. And it's possible we could end up picking up something, between now and then fly together again, but probably not likely. So a little sad. Won't be able to fly with First Officer Brent anymore because soon he'll be a captain. But good for him. Good for him.
Yeah, absolutely. How many years has it taken him? Can you remember?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
How many years has it taken him?
Oh, I think it's been a long time. He's enjoyed his super seniority status as a first officer, a senior first officer. I think like 20 something years. Yeah. And
wow.
He finally got off his duff and decided to go ahead and make the upgrade. And I know that he is going to be kicking himself when he gets through it and realizes that it's not a big deal. And that, he's probably going to wish that he had done it years earlier, but whatever.
And would have accrued a bit more seniority as a captain. He'd be quite senior by now.
He's going to be pretty senior he's going to be flying, the 717 as I do, and I think he's going to be like in the top 20% of captains.
Well,
so he's going to be all right.
He's going to be as he starts off. Is excellent.
Let's see. iHall Boxes says, did the two of you develop your own standard operating procedures yet? Yeah, well, over the years, I guess we kind of did. No, we always adhere strictly, iHall Boxes, to the standard operating procedures of Acme Airlines. But it was nice, and I'm sure you probably have had this experience where you fly with somebody frequently and you kind of get to know what people are going to be doing and anticipate moves and what the person's going to want. It's just, I kind of joke around and say, like it's my, my career marriage or my job. It's almost like being an old married couple and kind of knowing what my job husband. That sounds weird. Anyway, so I'm going to miss it. And, but good for Brent. He's going to have a great time. He's going to make a great captain. And, Rick, speaking of captains, Rick has successfully completed, and nobody had any doubts to the contrary, checking out as captain on the 747. So way to go, Rick. Let's see.
Well done again.
Congratulations on that. So he is a captain.
I bet he's a popular skipper to have.
I'll bet he is. I'll bet he is.
Nice guy to fly beside.
Being a commander of the Queen of the Skies must be
nice for a first officer who may not have a lot of time on type to have someone of his ability and skill sitting beside him. Must be a lesson every time.
Although I'm thinking if he starts talking about stuff, I'm wondering if the first officer just immediately falls asleep. And the crickets start playing.
Possibly.
Yeah. All right. So that's it for me. And as I mentioned, I may not have mentioned before we started the show. I did before we started, but I haven't mentioned it since. If you're wondering about my schedule, usually I put my schedule for the subsequent weeks on the website, and if you look at April, you'll see that I have no trips on my schedule, and that's because I have no trips on my schedule. So I'm doing something a little different than I normally do. I usually bid for trips and then I just kind of leave them and I don't really change them. And sometimes I'll pick up extra flying here and there to supplement it. But normally I'll leave those trips, where I've bid for them and go ahead and fly them. But I decided I'm going to drop all these trips because there was coverage for me to do that. And now I'm going to be kind of like on reserve, although it's a little bit better than being on reserve, because when you're on reserve, scheduling calls you up. You can't say, well, I don't know. I don't feel like really going out to fly, or I don't really want to fly there because, the weather.
Well, you can, but you can only ever do it once, because then they fire you.
That's true. You can make that decision, but that's never a good decision to make. So you just kind of suck it up and you do it. You go and you fly the trip that they want you to fly. I kind of look at what it is they want me to do, and I go, no, not doing that, and not interested in that. I'll wait for something else. And the risk to this thing that I'm doing this month is that it's possible that I don't fly anything. I don't think it's very probable, but it's possible. And if I don't fly anything, or I only fly 1 or 2 trips during the month, my paycheck is going to look quite different than it normally does, because we get paid by the hour. Yes, we are hourly wage earners. And if we don't fly a trip, we don't get paid. So.
Yes, you're like my builder. You get paid cash in hand.
What's that now?
You sound like you're my builder who gets paid cash in hand.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's gonna be nice, because it's gonna give me the opportunity to fly things that I want to fly. Hopefully, nice little one leg out on one in the evening, and then one leg back the next day, and nice 2-day trip for hardly even
you
being
can
gone.
look to see where the weather's nice and just head down there.
That's the key.
Yeah.
What were you saying, Liz? May's bid process will begin on the 4th or 5th of April. That's when they kind of show what is available for the following month, the month of May. And then I think it's by the end of day on the 11th of April is when my bids are due for May. I'll end up bidding for May, and I may take a look at the coverage and do this same thing, depending on how this works out for me in April. I may go, no, I'm going to go back to the normal way.
Yeah, that's right. I
We'll
can't
see.
afford to live like this.
Yeah. So we'll see. So that's the reason why I have nothing on my schedule. And as far as, where I'm going to be next month, I don't know. Just follow me on Twitter, and maybe I'll, put out there when I end up picking up something and I'm overnighting somewhere. We can have a last minute meetup thing. But all right, that's it for me. So Nick, what have you been up to?
Well, we're watching the weather, and you're sending us some horrible stuff. I've already mentioned that, really.
Yeah, you have. I'm still not quite understanding how it's my fault or our fault.
Weather goes from west to east, doesn't it? And you're west of us, so
okay.
You get your second.
Oh yeah, and that hurricane that just hit our country is going now toward you.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
With us
Wait a minute.
next
We haven't had a hurricane. I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, okay. Anyway, we're having some strong winds. You're having a bit of a windy time, apparently.
Okay.
On
If you say
Sunday,
so.
the 2nd of April. Now, don't forget, Saturday is the 1st of April, April Fool's Day. So make sure you've thought up something for your loved one. I did quite a good one. I came home from a trip, and I parked up outside, and it was about 5:30 in the morning. And I phoned up my wife, woke her up, and said, "Oh, darling, I've had a car's gone broken. It's outside. I'm like 20 miles up the road. Can you come pick me up?" And so she leapt out of bed and climbed into some clothes and came running through the front door to get in the car and pick me up. And I was standing outside, get April Fool. She was not impressed.
And you're still
anyway,
married.
by the by, so Sunday is 2nd of April. I'm heading up to Yorkshire to talk to the Air Yorkshire Aviation Society. Now,
are they the ones that have the taps in the control column?
That's right. Yeah,
the beer tap,
the free beer on the flight controls.
Okay,
yeah,
that's
exactly. Cool. Great idea. It's going to be around 2:30 in the afternoon, I think. I'll be there about 2ish. They hold it in what is called the media room, so it's something to do with PR. But the media room above the old cargo terminal, which is on the left side down Airedale House and is straight in front of you there if you look back towards the end of the runway, apparently. If you're not a member of the Air Yorkshire Aviation Society, you can still come along. Apparently, you can attend 2 of their meetings before and make up your mind if you want to join them or not. And you never know, you might appreciate being amongst aviation-minded people if you're in Yorkshire. And it's being held at Leeds Bradford Airport. So I forgot to mention that, Leeds Bradford Airport. Anyway, my friend has suddenly decided to talk. That's Sunday, back Monday. A couple of days ago, I met up with a pilot, lovely chap from Tallinn, Estonia, called Alan Talva. And he is currently at Farnborough doing some flying. And just got in touch, one of our listeners. So I said, oh, yeah, why not? Why don't we get together for a beer? So not only did we get together for a beer, but I managed to record a little video. So do you mind if we have a listen, Jeff? Is that okay?
Let's do that.
Okay. Hi, Jeff. This is Nick.
Hi.
And I found another listener. You know, we must have more than one. I don't know what you've been thinking, but over these years, but I found another one. Anyway, we're in a pub called The Foresters, which is near Farnborough, that fabulous place that you know so much about and that we've both been to in the past. Anyway, his name is Alan, and he's here doing a fantastic level of training. He's doing jet training. Yay! He's going to tell us all about that and his aviation history. So let me hand you over to Alan.
So yeah, as Nick said, we are in this wonderful pub here outside of Farnborough. It's very very nice of you, Nick, to come here and take me out here. So I have been in Farnborough for 2 weeks now, and as you mentioned, doing jet type rating, my first one. So it has been challenging 2 weeks, and not much else than studying, sleeping, eating, studying. So now it's nice to be outside of that cycle for a moment at least. I started my flying, let's say, career in 2016, and I just somehow became interested in flying, and I didn't have this usual knowing from the very young age that I definitely want to become a pilot. I was 23 years old when I had never flown on any airplane at all, and I thought that it's the most dangerous way of transportation. So I thought that I will never going to fly, even as a passenger. But that changed, and I found out that aviation is really interesting, and so I did my PPL in Estonia. Found out that I want to continue. Started working on my ATPL theory, and actually did it also in the UK at Bristol. So I was basically set on my path to becoming a commercial pilot, but then COVID happened, and that changed my plans a bit, and turned out that my this flight school where I did my PPL, they also need a flight instructor, so I became a flight instructor instead for those 2-3 COVID years, and now I have gained some experience instructing. I think it has been very interesting. I've learned a lot while instructing, and now I found this next opportunity and to go and then start flying jets. So very excited. So basically I'll be flying light business jets, so flying people around wherever they want to go. Well, I would like to say that it's a great group of people, and I started listening to APG when I started my PPL 2016. So I've worked through all the backlog, except for some reason my podcast app doesn't show the first 100 shows. So I don't know if I can find a way how to access those. Then I can work on these as well. But yeah, I definitely have the syndrome, and of course, I'd like to say hi to everyone in the APG crew and then the wider community. Back to you in the studio, Jeff.
Oh, thank you. Wow. Great interview, Captain Nick.
Thank you very much. It was very, it was automatic. He did a great job, and a lovely bloke. And I think he's probably in the same simulator that you flew in. Do you remember at Farnborough when Pip took you across to
the Hawker?
Across to the Hawker Sims there. So that's what he's training on at the moment, and having a thoroughly nice time over there. I think he's already on his way back home. Very interesting chap. His lovely partner is an opera singer, currently based in Belgium. But life is amazing if you're an airline pilot. Having your other half in Europe while you're based up in Estonia doesn't seem to be a problem. So more power to his elbow. I hope it all went well with the flying tests and the simulators there, Alan's, and it was a pleasure to meet you. So let's do it again someday.
Absolutely. And he mentioned that he could only, in his podcast player, he couldn't get the first 100 episodes.
Oh, yes, he did, didn't he?
And I'm looking just to make sure before I say it that it's still possible to get to that first 100. And
the secret 100. Yeah.
Let me
secret trick to get to them.
If you go to the airlinepilotguy.com website and you click on the podcasts page, and then right below the top, it says listen on Apple Podcasts, listen on Google Podcasts. There's a line there that says looking for the older episodes. You can find them by going here. And I have a link, all APG episodes feed. And that takes you to the Liberated Syndication website, which is the company that we use to host all of these files. And I can't do it right now while I'm talking, but I believe that you can go all the way back to. You can try it. I mean, I've been able to, but it's taking a while to scroll all the way back because there are hundreds of episodes. But I believe if you keep scrolling down, and it loads page after page after page, I believe it will eventually get to that first 100 episodes. Because that's where they live. They live here at this company's servers. And unfortunately, most of the big client, podcast client servers out there, like Apple's podcasts and Google's and all that kind of stuff, they only go back a certain amount and then they give up.
Yeah,
So,
most podcasts don't go into the hundreds of shows, but
no.
Yeah.
In fact, they say if you're starting a podcast and you actually make it to episode 7, that there's a high likelihood that you're going to actually continue to podcast for a while.
Excellent.
Yeah. So those first few are kind of difficult to get under your belt, and this is when you realize when you're doing a podcast that it's a lot more work than you thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for me, I have many people on our team here on the crew that help me out immensely, especially Captain Nick and Liz, the producer in the control room right now. I'm continuing to. They make it a lot easier for me to do this.
Well, we try and shoulder some of the load, but I'm afraid it still must take you an awful long time to get everything done.
Yeah, it does. But it's a labor of love, and Liz has confirmed that if you go to that link, which I'll try to remember to put. Oh, you're on episode number 1? Okay. Well, here I'm there too. Let me see here. What is this? See if we can hear something going on here. Oh yeah, I remember that.
That theme tune.
Yeah. Let's see what I sound like here.
Very cool.
This is the first rebranded Airline Pilot Guy episode. I did actually some shows before this. Okay, come on, Jeff.
I'm Captain Jeff, your host.
Oh, there he is.
Listening to the Airline Pilot Guy podcast.
That it?
A lot of music.
Come on, Jeff. You can. Yeah, I know. I need to. Little slow starting here. I love the music though. Okay, maybe I should advance a little bit so we
It's
don't
going to be pretty much strictly about flying, and most specifically about airline flying, with an emphasis on the art of piloting, which I think, as you know, if you've listened to my show, is something that we're losing.
Okay, that's a little tease of episode APG episode. As I mentioned, I was doing another show before I rebranded this, and it was called Catholic Pilot. I think I have about 30-something, 40 episodes, whatever. Alan Talver in our live audience. Thanks for meeting me. Oh, the guy that we just heard from there in the
Absolutely.
yeah, he's in our live audience. Thanks for meeting me, Nick. Not at all on the way back home, sitting in a pub in Farnborough. Oh, he's not home yet. Having dinner and preparing for tomorrow's check ride. Ooh, good luck, Alan.
Oh, yeah. Good luck. It's going to be a bit windy tomorrow. I think it's gusting 40 odd miles an hour for 35 knots. So take care and good luck.
Absolutely. Great to have you on in our community, and good luck to you, and hope to hear more from you in the future.
Please write a quick feedback, Alan, when you've passed that check ride, and let us know how it went. We'd love to read it out on the show.
Let's see. UH Blackhawk says, I'm expecting Don Johnson in a leisure suit with that music. Well, that's what you get.
Yeah.
No, I'm far from Don Johnson in a leisure suit. But I think, I'm sure that he would enjoy doing that. Nick, would you like to go over the cover art from our last episode 562?
Well, yes. I think it was Neil's suggestion that we have something to do with vasectomies, because don't remind me, but I think we somehow got onto that subject. So we had some vasectomy airlines nuts. There you go. So I don't know quite if that's where they get their nuts from, but they claim
sure
their
hope
nuts
not.
won't hurt you. So
well, those are awfully small nuts in that bag.
Well, speak for yourself.
Well, okay. And wasn't there something about VAS aviation and vasectomy or something? I don't know.
Almost certainly.
Connection.
Yes, I'm really not sure how we got on. I just get given a title, and the next day I can't remember a thing about it. So I usually have to just go, oh, I know what that was about. But again, I was using Midjourney.
Well, now that's interesting, the way that Midjourney kind of presented the tray tables facing the windows.
Yes. Well, yeah, it's a nice idea, wouldn't you? Like
it is a nice idea.
Yeah, facing a window as you fly.
Yeah.
I agree. But Midjourney is this AI-driven art website. So you just put in phrases that describe what you're looking for, and an AI constructs the image from scratch. Very very interesting. I'm learning how to phrase the bits correctly so that you get something that resembles the end product. But all I had to really do was change the name of the bag of nuts there.
Wow. Yeah, Liz is saying that she had trouble finding the show number.
Oh, really? Oh, I thought that was an easy one. Well, I forgot where
I don't think did you forget to put it in there?
No, it's in there.
Is it?
I might have made it a bit harder. Yes. Now, it was 562.
562.
And if you look in the bag of nuts, there's a space between some of the nuts nearly in the center. Just to the right of the center, that's where the 5 is. You go down a bit and to the right, that's where the 6 is, and up a bit to the right, and that's where the 2 is. You just have to look at it real carefully. Just in those shadowy bits between your nuts.
No. Okay. Well, that really tickled Liz. She's laughing extremely heartily right now.
Fair enough. Probably because she's had to expand the nuts up so she can see them.
Well, you not only didn't make it difficult to find, you made it impossible.
Well, I have to occasionally, because people keep saying, "Oh, I found it this week,
Oh, that
found
was
it
easy.
this week." So I think, well, you can't find it. You make it.
Oh.
They're partially visible once you get it expanded up a little bit, and then
Okay.
that obviously. Yeah, you
All
go, "Oh,
right.
I know."
Very good. Liz is thanking you for that. All right. Let's move on to Le Coffee Fund. And that's when we do our little Jeff Smith jingle. Oh, that's me that does that. Here we go. I have to push the button, not Liz.
Johnny, how much more coffee?
No thanks.
No thanks. I love coffee. I love tea. I love the APG community. Coffee and tea and the Java and me. A cup, a cup, a cup, a cup, a cup. Oh yeah. Coffee Fun. That's Jeff Smith, the professional podcast jingle maker extraordinaire. Thank you, Jeff. And the Coffee Fund is your way to support our show financially. And a couple different ways to do that. We have the first one, which is the original, the OG, the Coffee Fund Classic method. Your way to give us a 1 or 2 off donation here and there every now and then. We also have recurring contributors as well. Thank you to all of you who do that. But since the last episode, Vernon Tryon, Louis Zipes, and Doron De Silva contributed. Very nice, generous contributions. Thank you, gentlemen, for that. We do appreciate that. The other way that you can contribute via the Coffee Fund is to become a patron of the show via patreon.com. And since the last episode, we have a new producer. Robert Warden is at the producer level. So thank you so much, all of you patrons and Coffee Bar Club members. We do appreciate your financial support. If you want to join this great group of people, head over to airlinepilotguy.com/coffee. You'll be glad you did. We will too.
Captain, incoming message.
All right. Okay. Captain Nick is returning to his podcasting position, and we'll resume. 3 minutes from the hour and a half mark, according to the control room.
I'm back.
Okay. And typically we shoot for around the 2-hour time frame for our plane tail, if we have one. And we do today. And so it looks like we can do some feedback.
Excellent. Let's get it done.
All right, let's do that. Let's start off with this piece of feedback from Marty. And let's see. Marty says, hello, APG crew from a sunny and warmish-ish Edmonton, Alberta. This is the first time I'm sharing feedback, as I feel I finally have something that might be worth contributing. First, I'd like to say thank you to the APG crew and community. I've been listening for a little over 3 years, and in that time, you've kept me informed, entertained, and inspired. Secondly, I'd like to share that I have just passed my instructor rating. All right, yay. And started working at the flight school where I completed my training. All right. Flight school instructor pilot. That's awesome. I'm 43 years old, have 2 children at home, and I'm definitely at a later stage of life than many other new instructors. I wanted to share this with the community in the hopes that I might provide some motivation or inspiration to others out there who may be thinking, I'm too old to change careers and start flying. And if that's your question, the answer is no, you're not too old, and it's not too late. Never stop chasing your dreams. Well said, Marty. He said, thank you once again for being my companions on this journey. Please keep doing what you do. Wishing you all blue skies and tailwinds, and of course, talons. Douglas, Marty from Alberta, the beautiful province in Canada there, Edmonton to be exact. And yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it is. And 43 is not young to be starting a flying career, but it's certainly not too old. you've got a good 20, 25 years in your job available to you. So good luck with that. I hope it all progresses well, and please keep us abreast of your progress.
Yes, please do. Okay, this next one is from Titus, and hi APG crew. This is my first time feedback. I'm not sure if you heard this story. It's a story of a missionary pilot in Mozambique who was wrongly arrested for flying in supplies. And there's a graphic here. Pray for Pilot Ryan. Mission Aviation Fellowship, MAF pilot Ryan Coer, is coming up on 4 months of wrongful detainment in Mozambique. We anticipate the end of the investigation and a ruling from a judge on March 6th, although we understand that dates have been fluid throughout this process. Please spend time praying this week for Ryan and Eric and Willem to be released and the case dismissed. And this is from Ryan's wife, Annabelle, and Eric and Willem are their boys. And I just quickly, before we did the show today, because we've had it in our feedback for a little bit, just wanted to see if there was any kind of an update on Ryan's status, and update for March 22nd, so about a week ago. Ryan has been enjoying his newfound freedom this past week as he shared a message with his coworkers that we want to share with you. And then they have a video link to that. He has been to a doctor for a checkup, and also met with the U.S. ambassador to Mozambique and some of his staff. They remain engaged with the case since Ryan is out on a provisional release. Ryan has returned to his home in Nampula, where he will wait for the judicial process to move forward on his case. Please continue to pray that this case will be quickly dismissed and that Ryan is granted a full release and that he can be reunited with his family soon. Now, I think he was accused of providing supplies to some insurgent groups in the country. Let's see. Yeah, he was detained prior to piloting a charter flight to deliver supplies to orphanages near Montepuez, Mozambique. While conducting the normal security scan at the airport on November 4, police took an interest in some vitamins, over-the-counter medications, and food preservative supplies he was to deliver to the orphanages and adult staff. None of the confiscated material belonged to Ryan, nor had it been loaded onto the airplane. AAL has been conducting these annual supply charter flights to the orphanages since 2014. So looks like he was wrongly accused of wrongdoing, and hopefully the court system, the legal system there will kind of sort it all out, and he will be free long-term, not just on a provisional basis.
Absolutely. Of course, we're going to have another story if we get to it about the difficulties of being a foreign pilot working in a country where their laws might be quite different to what you're used to at home, and particularly when there's a country with a conflict, what might be seen by yourself as aid for, in this case, orphans, could be seen by the government as that aid not guaranteed to go to where they expect it to, but to support people who might be trying to overthrow the established government, for example. So you do have to be very careful and squeaky clean, and things can sometimes go adrift. And I feel this is what happened here. But there are always two sides to the story. We don't know the Mozambique government's side because we don't have any quotes from them, really. But I just say if you're in one of these difficult situations, just make absolutely certain that all your paperwork and clearances have been cleared and okayed with the government that is in power, and that they're absolutely aware of your actions and they have agreed that it's okay to do it, and then you won't fall foul their laws. It's a very difficult situation for people to understand when what apparently on the surface appears to be just a pure humanitarian flight and an American citizen caught up in a legal system in a foreign country. But for example, even airline pilots, when they're just traveling abroad or airline crews, we discovered after a while that when we've been going to Dubai, that some of the straightforward over-the-counter medications that we could buy from any pharmacy without a prescription in the United Kingdom were prohibited in Dubai. And if you were caught with them on your person entering the country, you could be arrested, and there could be a court case against you for trying to smuggle drugs. And you might go, well, that's ridiculous. This is not even a prescription drug. But in that country, it is against the law to move those drugs around. So you do have to be very careful.
Yes. And, you mentioned that there is another piece of feedback that we may get to, and the control room has directed me to go ahead and cover it now, or us to cover it now, so that we can kind of tie it in with the Mozambique story. And this was sent to us by Nigel, a big part of our APG community. And I think that I'm going to let Captain Nick go ahead and handle this piece of feedback for us.
Yeah, well, I had to listen to it, and it's a little political. So we try and avoid political conflict on this show because we try and stay above that. And we all have different political and religious views, so the show isn't about that. But the interesting thing in here is that it's a former US citizen who is now an Australian citizen who was in the American military as a pilot. And he, along with some former RAF pilots, have been working through a company in South Africa to provide training for pilots in China. So it sounds a little complicated, but basically the guys have joined a South African company, and then they're sent to China to provide flying training for Chinese pilots. And the problem is that it is possible that these pilots might go on to become military pilots. They might already be military pilots, but from what I have read, the only training that these foreign instructors are providing is flight training. They're not doing anything on weapons. So, they're just teaching people to fly, as many people are around the world. But now that this chap has gone back to Australia, presumably after filling his contract or stopping work, the US government, because the relations perhaps with China and America aren't at an all-time high, are seeking to extradite him back to the United States to face charges. Now, that's not the nub of it. The big problem at the moment is he's being held in remand. He's being remanded in prison until the extradition hearings can go ahead. And this is just the first stage. And the Australian authorities are very strict when it comes to extradition cases on whether they will allow people to be allowed out on bail. And it's very unusual for them to be allowed out on bail. And so this chap, this Mr. Duggan, is being held in far from congenial circumstances when it's just merely an extradition case. He certainly hasn't been yet proven guilty of any offense, yet he is forced to stay in jail, and not a very pleasant place at all. And the main complaint at the moment is is this a fit place for him to wait for the very long period it seems to be taking for him to face his extradition charges, only the first stage in getting him back to the United States to face more serious charges. So it is an interesting story if you're into this sort of thing, and I'm sure Jeff will provide the link to the radio program which discussed it with a legal representative who was able to give advice on it. And when you think of it, it brings to mind the pitfalls that face you unexpectedly when you do something that on the surface seems quite an ordinary thing. You're an ex-military instructor, flying instructor. You're going out to another country to teach pilots. You're not doing anything that would appear remotely illegal. Yet way down the road, government's opinions might change on whether what you're doing is a good thing or a bad thing, and you might all of a sudden find yourself in the poo. It reminds me of a case where a pilot with a foreign first officer, captain, he was an expat flying for an airline in a foreign country. They did a landing, and there was an argument between the two pilots as to whether they should continue with the landing or go around. They were actually on the runway at this point. And the captain was trying to stop the airplane, and the first officer was trying to make it go. And every time the captain slammed the throttles, tried to put the brakes on, the first officer did the opposite. I'm pretty certain that it might have been the other way around, actually. The captain decided to go around, and the first officer wanted to land. Anyway, by the way, they crashed the airplane. Both survived, but in this particular country, the first thing you do is get thrown into prison while you await for the outcome of whatever board of inquiry is going to be, and whether they're going to then charge you for some kind of negligence. And being in a country where the legal system might be biased against expats, people from other countries, there was a good chance that this chap would be kept in jail, would be found guilty of some misdemeanor and kept there for quite some time. It's always worth ensuring that, particularly if you're the captain of an airplane operating in a foreign country, that you do have access to and immediate access to legal representation and legal advice in the country at which you might have an incident. And the way I achieved that was to join a strong union who had a very strong legal section and had access to legal representatives in every country where I flew. So I had an emergency telephone number that was active 24 hours a day. And if I had an incident in a foreign country, it was almost my first action was to call my union and arrange for local legal representation to ensure that I was treated fairly when I was there. And my union also used to provide a checklist of things to do and things particularly not to do, not to say, not to do. And in some cases, I've heard of pilots who've fallen foul of the local police following an incident where their legal representative has got them away from the police and almost immediately put them on an aircraft out of the country, because he said, if you stay in this country, you're going to end up in jail. The best thing you can do if you want to fight this is to do it from your own country at home. So that was the situation. He was more or less smuggled out of the country straight away. And I'm not trying to make it appear to be a difficult thing, because incidents aren't common and most countries would treat you fairly, but not everyone. So just make sure that you know where you're going and what the situation is when you get there.
Yeah. Another comment from our live audience, UH Blackhawk. I would be loath to use my military instructor qualifications to teach overseas without the blessing of the State Department. But I think part of the problem with this case is the dual citizenship, I would imagine, Australian and U.S. citizenship.
Yeah, that is an interesting one. The fact that he is now an Australian citizen, and to become an Australian citizen, he's had to give up his
Oh,
U.S.
So
citizenship.
it's not a dual
yet
citizenship.
He can still be extradited for the actions he took when he was before that event, I guess.
Oh, okay. Wow. The tangled web we weave.
Exactly.
And people ask me why I don't like flying to these small little countries in the Caribbean and think, I'm good. I'm going to stay in the U.S. I mean,
Yeah, you've only got less than a year, so if I
exactly. I don't want
take
to.
care.
Something goes wrong, I don't want to be thrown in jail for the rest of my life. I really don't. Oh, and then Canada. I used to go to Canada too, and they're the worst of all of them.
Oh golly, yes.
They'll throw you in
Talk
jail
about
and
radical.
throw away the key.
Absolutely.
Just kidding, of course. Just in case somebody doesn't know my sense of humor.
Doesn't realize.
Yeah.
Like some of my best friends are Canadians.
Okay. I don't really have any friends who are Canadian at all. I try to stay away from those people. Love you, Liz. Okay. This is some feedback. We have some Mo feedback from Mo. He says, "What's stopping me?" Good evening, Captain Jeff. I'll try not to make this too long-winded. I fell in love with aviation at a very young age, and I knew that I had to do something in that field. I went to an ATCTI school to become an air traffic controller, but unfortunately that never worked out. So I tried the next best thing, in my opinion, and became an airline dispatcher for an airline based in Phoenix. Then a few years later for an airline based in Las Vegas. The first time I got to a jump seat, I'm pretty sure I had tears in my eyes as we rolled down the runway. I dispatched for a few years, but around the start of COVID, I had to stop. I've always had an itch to be in aviation. Last April or so, I decided I want to try to become an airline pilot. Now, here comes my problem. I'm having lots of fears about pursuing it and have been procrastinating for the last year. There's always something stopping me, whether it's fear of failure, fear of some kind of let me try that one again. There's always something stopping me, whether it's fear of failure, fear of something catastrophic, failure of the airplane during training or hour building, fear of not being competent enough or smart enough to succeed and be successful at it. I've never had such strong feelings of wanting to do something, but have it met with such strong doubt. I'm 33 years old and want to get this done as soon as possible, as I'm a little older than when most people would start training to get into the airlines. I was hoping I could get yours and Captain Nick's thoughts. Thanks for taking the time to read my email. And he said, P.S. Love your show. I drive between Las Vegas and California weekly, and your show is a go-to. Thank you very much,
Oh, how nice.
Mo, for the nice comments about our show. We really enjoyed doing it.
Is that Mo that's on the cartoon?
Which cartoon?
Family Guy, is it?
Oh, Three Stooges?
Oh no, he's the barman, isn't he, Mo?
It's Mo. Oh yeah, I don't know a lot of the characters in that.
Oh, that's on The Simpsons. I'm thinking.
Simpsons. Okay. Yeah, well, this might
Family
be.
Guy have an airline pilot on there. I'm trying to remember his name.
Yeah. That was that's what's his name?
Giggity.
Gosh darn it. Yeah, the guy that goes
was his
giggity giggity.
catchphrase. Giggity giggity.
Shoot, why can't I? Oh yeah, the chat room will definitely know. And I even have a sound effect.
Barman. But he could be a barman, couldn't he? Mo could be a barman.
What's his name? It's Quagmire. Quagmire is the airline pilot. Yeah, thank you, Super Fred driver.
Well done.
Anyway, in fact, I think I have.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is your captain, Glenn Quagmire.
A PA. We have a recording of his PA. Okay. So what do we do? What do we tell Mo, Captain Nick?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. And to be brutally honest, Mo, I went through the same kind of problem of self-doubt when I left the military. I was 39, so, a few years on, but the military to me had almost been like a family, and it was, in those times, more or less a job for life, or at least a job to 55, not necessarily flying. If for some reason you lost your flying medical or something, then you knew they would find a job for you, and you wouldn't probably lose any rank. You still get paid, and you would be fine until you could pick up your pension at the end. To leave that sort of halfway through, I served 19 years, but I could have gone on for another 15 or 16. Was quite a step, and it's a bit of a leap into the unknown, because you spend a long time in the military and you know how to do their way of things, but all of a sudden you've got this almost insurmountable number of qualifications you're supposed to obtain in a very short time, and then you've got all the flying tests, and you've got to self-fund all this, and it wasn't that hard for me, because it was funding, because I had a reasonable amount of experience. I just had to get an instrument rating. That was about £10,000, and pass all my exams. That was probably another 5 or 6 grand, because attending schools and things to learn all the stuff and get through it all. Anyway, so and then of course you've got to find a job. And when I left and was there, it took me 12 months to even get the sniff of a job. It was the middle of the Gulf War, and none of the airlines in the UK, and not even the contacts I had with airlines in, say, Australia, were showing the hint of recruiting anybody. So for 12 months, I lived on my savings and watched that disappear down the plug hole pretty fast, because when you've got a mortgage and family to keep up, it's not easy. Managed to get some part-time jobs, but I had this dreadful feeling that I'd made an awful mistake. I'd left a situation of security and thrown myself out into the open market, where it's dog eat dog out there. Everyone's got a ATPL and a few thousand hours, and I had no type ratings for anything. I wasn't that an attractive option. So I went through heavy periods of self-doubt, and so I know what it is to make that jump. I was pretty certain it was all going to turn around, and luckily for me it did. But I do understand where you're coming from when you're sitting there looking at, is there going to be a problem? Am I going to have the ability? And all I can say to you is, follow your heart. If you believe in yourself, then there's a really good chance that you will come through at the other end and look back and say, that was a hurdle, and I'm proud of myself for getting over that. When it comes to something like fear of catastrophic failure of the aircraft, well, no, that's, you should have the confidence that you're going into a profession that is inherently safe, and that your training and your ability will carry you through, and that the aircraft are wonderfully safe. They really are. Compared with military airplanes, they're absolutely brilliant, and there should really be no concern there. But you've got to convince yourself of that, because after all, when you're a professional pilot, you'll be looking to appear confident and assured in front of 300 or more passengers, who are all looking to you to feed from your confidence and your assurity that this flight is going to be safe and normal and even boringly run of the mill. And you should be able to kind of exude that confidence, because people will expect it of you. And it's just one of those things you will need to pick up as the years go by and as your confidence builds.
UH Blackhawk in our live audience says, times have changed. It probably would not take him long to break even. The days of regional first officers making $17,000 a year are behind us. And that's a good thing.
I'm glad to hear that.
For sure, yeah. And Tim Van Ram makes a good point as well, which is really hard to believe. Getting a job is tough when you are a virgin.
I was a 40-year-old virgin.
Oh, that's sad. But,
they made a movie about me.
I know. It was a good movie. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was. I thought so.
And iHall Boxes said, you miss 100% of the shots you didn't take, and you got to take them one at a time. Good point. I was going to say I share a lot of my, as far as my flying history with Nick. I mean, we were both in the military. Now, I think my mindset and my intentions going into the military were quite opposite of Captain Nick's. I had no intention whatsoever of being a military officer for most of my career. I guess I was kind of selfish because the reason why I went into the military, in addition to, being able to defend my country, was to also get the experience that I needed to fly in the airlines, which has been the dream of mine since I was a little kid. Looking up into the skies of Southern California and watching all these airplanes fly by constantly, and I've always wanted to be in one of those airplanes flying. And quite honestly, I actually changed my mind about being an airline pilot for my career when I was in my latter stages of high school and early college years, because I did not want to go into the military. And I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that I knew nothing about what it would be like to be in the military at all, because I didn't come from a family of military officers and that kind of thing. So I finally got to the point where in my line of studies as an engineer, I realized I couldn't picture myself doing that for a living. I really wanted to fly. That was a passion of mine. And I finally thought, you know what? If it means going into the military to do it, then that's what I'm going to do. And this is back in the 70s, 1970s, when the people that were getting hired by the major carriers at the time were mostly military trained pilots. And so I finally thought, if that's what I got to do, I'm just going to suck it up and do it. And man, it was the best thing I've ever done in my life. Going into the military, working with such amazing people, and the training that I received in the military was just beyond anything I can imagine. The things that I got to experience, the kind of flying that we got to do, was just something that I'll never get to do again, most likely in my life. And
Second to none.
It really is. It's just top notch. And and then it's just the feeling of being in the military services. They take care of you. You may not be making huge amounts of money, but I never felt like I was not making a lot of money. I didn't really think about it that much. I just knew that everything was taken care of for me. My housing, my meals, my uniforms, everything. And I was lucky, very blessed, that opposite to the situation that Nick had, and of course a lot of this has to do with where you're in the military and where you're trying to get a job as an airline pilot, and it also has a lot to do with the timing. And at the time, my timing was good when I was coming up to the end of my first date of separation in the military. I mean, I only got separated one time, but I mean, my earliest point of separation, I had fulfilled my commitment from getting my wings, and I was able to separate from the military at that point. And just happened to be the time where here in the United States, airlines were hiring. It was not like the situation that Nick found himself facing. It was a situation where, oh, okay, you were in the U.S. Air Force, and you were an instructor pilot, and you have this many hours, and you're hired. The airline at the time, 95% of the pilot hires were ex-military, just like me. So it was seamless. I didn't pay a dime of money to get any ratings. We had a little test that I think it was like a 25 question test called a military equivalency exam that I took after I got my wings in the Air Force. And basically the FAA said, okay, here's a commercial multi-engine instrument rated limited to centerline thrust. Here you go. You have a civilian rating now. And that was given to me for free. And
that's brilliant.
The only thing I had to have when I was out there putting in my applications to the major carriers was airline transport pilot written examination. That was the only requirement that I had to have. Now, a lot of guys were also getting their airline transport pilot certificates as well. And yeah, that was costing money. I think at that time was somewhere between $1,000 and $5,000, I think. And I decided that I didn't need to do that, that I could get hired with just my commercial multi-engine instrument rating. And that's what I did. I got hired by a very, very strong legacy carrier. And I knew that when it was time for me to upgrade to captain, that I would get my airline transport pilot certificate as part of that process. So again, talking about being blessed and not having to pay, really, I had maybe 4 or 5 hours in my logbook before I went off into the U.S. Air Force. And I'm not even sure much of that I had to actually pay for, because the guy that was the instructor was another fellow lineman, or line boy, I think they called us, at a fixed base operator. And he took me up in a Cessna 150, and I'm not even sure I gave him any money for it. So my training,
But you robbed him.
yeah, I don't know. Maybe I gave him something. I'm not sure. It's so long ago, I don't remember. But bottom line is, because it was such an easy path for me, and I was so blessed not to have a huge financial outlays, is one of the reasons why I'm doing this show with my good friends. And it's my way of kind of giving back, because I've had such a wonderful career, flying career. And I mean, it just couldn't have been better. And again, a lot of it has to do with timing. And as far as the feeling like I wasn't up to accomplishing all of these things, my mindset from the very beginning was like, no, this is what I'm going to do. And I don't think I ever had that doubt at all implanted, or that seed was never implanted in me. It was like, this is what I'm going to do. These are the steps I have to take to get there. I know people that have done this ahead of me, and I'm thinking they're really good people too, but there's nothing special about them. They're not
no better
that
than
much
you are,
smarter
so
than me. And
why
in fact,
shouldn't you do
some
it?
were going like, if they can do it, heck, I can do it too.
Yeah.
That's the kind of mindset that I
It's
had
a
about it.
well-trodden path, and there are peoples of all sorts of levels of ability that have been there before you. So it's nothing to stop you.
And iHallbox is another comment from him. Think about the fear of being old and regretting what you missed out on in life.
Yeah, it's very
no
true
kidding.
also.
And I'll just say that I can another parallel for me was, when you get to a certain point in your airline career, okay, you've made it, you're hired by the airlines, and now you're looking at, okay, do I put in for, upgrade training like, Brent's doing right now. And at first you're going like, no, I don't know enough to do that. I need to have more experience. I need to, experience the operation and try to put myself in this person's shoes, and what would I do in this situation, and that kind of thing. And at first you're kind of like reluctant, and then after a while you start getting a little frustrated with some of these, these guys that you're flying with that are making like dumb decisions, and you're thinking, oh, I think I would have done better in this case. And then it just gets to the point, finally you're going, if this idiot can do it, I can do it too. And honestly, I mean, that's what finally pushed me over to go ahead and put my bid in as a captain, because I'm thinking, okay, it's going to be stressful, and it's going to be difficult, and it's going to be a lot of responsibility. But I'm thinking, gosh, there are so many people I've flown with in my past that they did it, and my goodness, if they can do it, I certainly can. And so that's finally what pushed me through it. And then once you do it, you're going like, what took me so long to do it? Although for me and my timing, I really couldn't have done it much earlier than I did, because of the seniority situation and the economy and the cyclical nature of the airline industry, yada, yada, yada. But anyway, so that's my 2 cents about that.
Absolutely. And
Okay.
I think a lot of what Mo might be feeling is just that they're making the step, crossing that line and saying, right, I'm going to go for it. I think once you've got yourself through that initial problem, you'll find things will flow a lot easier. Don't try and look at the whole expanse of knowledge you've got to obtain, just the first goal. Look at your first goal, get through that, then look forward. Don't try and encompass the entirety of what you've got to achieve in one go. It's not like that. You'll do it in
Exactly.
like stepping stones.
Yeah, because if you try to look at all of it, then that's just overwhelming and can be paralyzing. You can't let that happen. Good advice, Nick. Well, speaking of your military career, I wish there was a way for you to kind of bring us with you and your experience. Oh, wait a minute. There is
I've
a
got
way.
a time machine if you'd like to use it.
Well, let's do that.
Okay.
I think we can go now to the old pilot's plane tail. And as I've mentioned many times before, these are my favorites. The RAF, Royal Air Force Form 414, Volume 21, the latest installment of this. And I'm looking forward to it, as I'm sure everybody else is as well. Here we go. Here we go. It worked before.
The Old Pilot's Plain Tales. RAF Form 414, Volume 21. Life on 77 Squadron had settled down to a routine, if it ever really could on a fighter squadron. I'd been asked to take over the job of the daily planner, who detailed who would fly to fulfill our commitments for the week. As such, I kept track of who was available to fly, what level of ability they were, and tried to give everyone an even number of hours. Months varied, but it was common to get around 20 hours a month, leading to an annual total of over 200 hours. As the planner, I could have given myself an unfair amount of flying, but this would soon be noticed by my fellow pilots, who by now referred to me as NTP, Nick the Pom, and made public. This meagre total would have been laughed at by the average airline pilot, who often topped out at over 900 hours a year. But after 19 years of continuous military flying, I only accrued a total of 3,676 hours. The big difference was the quality of flying that we did, and although the Hornet had an autopilot, I barely remember ever using it. For example, a low-level attack sortie would often begin the day before, particularly for the leader of the mission, with route planning, map preparation, and because it was Australia, filing a flight plan. Apparently, every cocky, shit-kicker or jackaroo in the outback with a farm strip and a decrepit radio-less old air truck needed to know exactly where and when the Royal Australian Air Force might be a day in advance. Knowing the attention to NOTAMs that professional pilots give, I wonder how many actually read them before jumping into their flying utes. Answers on a postcard, please. What's more, once we left the tyrannical embrace of air traffic control to descend to low level, we knew that all hell would break loose should we fail to emerge back into radio contact within 2 minutes of our declared time. This made any tactical changes to our plan just about impossible. I was used to a freer form of military flying, where we could act completely independently, under the same rules as other airspace users, but I wasn't there to try and change the way the country operated, so kept my lip well buttoned. There were a few low-flying areas where random flights could be conducted, but they were small and well-known and didn't fit the requirements for good training. The leader would brief the sortie, which required thought and organisation and could last an hour if it was a complex mission involving outside agencies, for example. The rest of the formation would need to prepare for their individual roles in the flight and be ready for what would be asked of them, a knowledge of the weapons to be simulated and the attack profiles, etc. 30 minutes would probably be allocated just to get out to our jets and get airborne, remembering that we had to manually enter every coordinate for our route, each requiring a bunch of alphanumerics followed by an error check to ensure it all looked good. Finally, we'd be off to enjoy 90 minutes of sweaty fun, thrashing around in the red dust of the Australian outback, before throwing the jets back at the runway, parking up and debriefing what had just been done in great detail, often for 2 or 3 times the duration of the actual mission, so that we could squeeze the absolute maximum benefit out of our flight. There was certainly plenty of variety to our flying. In 1 month, I flew some practice bombing attacks both day and night on the Evans Head weapons range north of us by 230-odd miles. This was followed by a 4-ship formation demonstration of ground attack on our own airfield as part of an open day celebration for the public. Then night radar bombing on the Beecroft Range at Jarvis Bay, about 150 miles south. Then we bombed and sank a tugboat before flying off to New Zealand. There's actually a little more to that story, the tugboat that is. The Murray Porter was a 363-ton tug registered under the flag of Australia in 1966. She plied her trade faithfully, pushing and pulling vessels in and out of Sydney Harbour until the 17th of November 1987, when she met her fate, courtesy of the Royal Australian Air Force. Just when she was coming of age at only 21, when the world should have been her oyster, she was taken in tow and dragged out into the open ocean between Sydney and Newcastle, where her position was noted and a temporary danger area declared around her. Early that morning, 16 Hornets from Royal Australian Air Force Base Williamtown were prepared with live Mark 82 500-pound slick bombs in quiet corners of the airfield to prevent sympathetic detonations in case of an accident. In turn, 4 formations of 4 taxied out and took off, heading out to sea on what would be the Murray Porter's last day afloat. The first 2 foreships were from 77 Squadron, the following aircraft from 3 Squadron, the dodgy lot next door. The first formation attacked, and then it was our turn. Our leader swung his aircraft onto the attack heading, and in turn we followed in trail. We'd accelerated to attack speed and were skimming the sea as the miles counted down. With the APG 65 radar searching for the target and the waves whipping past, I became a little anxious, but then I saw the little brick-shaped radar return that indicated the Murray Porter, very near to where I expected it. With the radar locked, the bombing symbology appeared, a line stretching up the head-up display. Beneath me, the ballistic computers were calculating my energy levels against the distance left to go, and at about 5 miles I manoeuvred the aircraft flight vector onto the line and put the master switch on, and with the burners in I pulled hard up. As the nose came up, I knew I would be theoretically vulnerable to a ship's defense system, so I hit the chaff and flares button near the left canopy rail, and the pre-programmed sequence, not that we actually had any to play with in those days, were fired, and I pressed the commit button on the control stick to allow the bomb to come off. I concentrated on keeping everything steady, smoothly holding about 4G as the aircraft symbol rose towards the release cue, and when the two met, I felt a small bump on the airframe as the 500 pounds of ordnance fell away. A second or more of pull and I inverted to watch the torpedo-shaped bomb flying below me, still climbing to the apogee of its arc. In the real world, I'd be banging another sequence of defensive decoys and diving back down on a safe egress heading, but this was too good not to watch. For a while I gently hung in my straps, formating on 7.5 feet of matte green steel, stuffed full of 80-20 mix of trinitrotoluene and aluminium powder, added to improve the heat output of the TNT and the power of the blast. I couldn't see the fuse arming, but knew that as soon as it had fallen away from its station, a simple wire strap had pulled a pin that allowed the propeller on the front to spin up, freeing the pistol to operate on impact. I didn't descend down with the weapon, but stayed high out of the way as it turned tail on and fell out of sight. I switched my gaze to the tugboat and realized why the radar had taken so long to find it. The once proud Murray Porter had no visible superstructure to speak of. It had all been wiped off the hull by the first attack, and it was little more than the outline of the hull sticking out a few feet above the waterline. The leader's bomb impacted as I watched, and the wreck disappeared beneath a bright white-yellow flash, black smutty smoke, and a fast-expanding cloud of white shock waves. Then my effort detonated in more or less the same spot, and as I eased out of the way I could see a plume of water rise just to beam the ship, and then another hit from our last two bombs. As we taxied into park in front of the squadron, we had smug smiles on our faces as the 3 squadron boys were sent to park on the other side of the airfield amongst the arming revetments, as they had brought all their bombs back home. By the time they had lined up to have a shot at it, we'd sent the 130-foot, 40-metre-long tugboat to the bottom of the Tasman Sea. 3 days later, I climbed into another of our clean new jets to head back out over the Tasman Sea and not return. No, I wasn't looking for Australia's Bermuda Triangle, but starting a journey of 1,200 miles, of which only 10 would be spent overland. We were deploying from Willie to Royal New Zealand Air Force Base, Ohakea, on what was for the Australians part of a long-term mutual commitment, but for me was an amazing new experience full of weird stuff I hadn't done before. The Kiwis had a small boutique air force. They had a few Strike Masters, a weapons-capable version of the Jet Provost that I flew during my basic training, that they operated as a jet trainer and a weapons trainer, and nicknamed the Blunty. But their main combat unit was 75 Squadron, which flew the Douglas A4K Skyhawk, initially acquired from the US Navy, but boosted to a complement of 20 aircraft by the purchase of 10 A4Gs from the Royal Australian Navy. The flight was fairly long and close to our maximum range, so we were glad to break into the circuit and touch down on New Zealand soil. However, we were under strict instructions not to lift our canopies on the taxi-in. As we all parked up, an official from what was probably the New Zealand Ministry of Ag and Forestry came around to each of us in turn, and we cracked our canopies so he could pass up a can of insecticide. Masks up as we emptied those cans into our little cockpit space, just in case we were the reincarnation of the superhero Flyman, and our ground crew kept us amused whilst we killed off our alter egos. Before long, and smelling of DDT, we were off to the mess to enjoy my first pint of beer for a year or more. Not that the Australians don't drink beer, just not pints, or certainly not back then. They had a confusing array of sizes of beer glasses, which ranged from 4 to 15 imperial fluid ounces. In theory, they had a 20-ounce pint, but nobody wanted one because there was the faint chance a modicum of warmth might have got through the frozen glass into the frozen beer so that you could taste it. These glasses had names that changed depending on what state you were in. That's geographical, not of intoxication, which varied from small, Forsey, Shetland or Pony, through beer, butcher, bobby, 6, 7 and glass, to middy, handle, pot or 10, and eventually a schooner, or possibly a pint, which wasn't a pint, if you see what I mean. My favourite wasn't the small bottle known as a stubby, but its much larger cousin, only found up north, called the Darwin Stubby. I digress. Whilst I imagined Australia of the 1980s to be a very pleasant mix of Europe and America, New Zealand had a much stronger British flavour, in the nicest way, with good manners, cream teas, a more laid-back approach to life, and brown beer in proper dimpled glasses with handles. I felt like I'd come home, albeit a home of the 1950s. Part of this was down to the motor cars everybody used. New Zealand had a highly punitive import tax on new cars from abroad. As a result, everyone hung on to what they had for as long as possible. I imagine it was a bit like Cuba after the US embargo, where classic old American sedans with huge tail fins cruise around like a post-war movie studio. Since it was the days before the Japanese car manufacturers invaded, the cars in New Zealand were old British models. Austins, Morrises, Daimlers, Rovers, Wolseley's and Triumphs, all in excellent condition, mainly due to the lack of salt on the roads that rots British cars at home. Indeed, despite being on the bottom of the globe, everything felt fine until my world was literally turned upside down when I strolled up to the bar and stood beside a very familiar RAF pilot I had known since my earliest days in the military, John Fiennes. John, who we could tickle until he hyperventilated himself into complete unconsciousness, who could sleep in the bath until he looked like a white maggot, John, who became disorientated while supersonic and a lightning at night over the sea, recovering by pulling some 10 Gs, thereby wrecking his aircraft forever, and last seeing a negative height on his altimeter before falling unconscious. John, who had been a fellow instructor on Hawks and was now with me drinking beer some 12,000 miles from home. Weird. Whilst John went about his work for the RAF Central Flying School by checking out some of the Kiwi instructors, come Monday we began work with the A4s, the story of which I shall have to put off until my next logbook tale. Suffice to say, what I have described up to now occurred in just the first 20 days of November 1987, and the rest of the month would include combat missions against the Skyhawks, air-to-air refueling from them, ship strikes against targets towed by their Navy frigates, and visual dive bombing at night under Lepus flares. Tune in for the next exciting installment of Flyman.
I can't wait. Flyman.
Oh yeah, my new nickname, I think.
Wow, that was packed with all kinds of gems.
Oh, there were some good times. It was a busy time and great fun. And of course, everything we did was brand new to me. So I just loved it. But I'll never forget that really strange dislocation I felt when I walked up to the bar in New Zealand, the other side of the world. And there was one of my oldest friends leaning up against it, drinking a beer. And I was completely, confused.
It seems like he was quite a character based on your
Oh, he was. That story of him nearly hitting the ocean at night in his Lightning is just horrendous, because not only did he manage to survive, the Lightning, when it was transonic, had a big altimeter error. And the last thing he remembered before he fell unconscious is he pulled this huge high G pull up to get away from the water, was about minus 1,250 feet. And when they calculated his speed and the altimeter error, they reckoned he came within 100 feet of the ocean. That's how close he was. He had no idea because it was dark. And he went unconscious. When he woke up, of course, he was going vertically upwards with no S-speed whatsoever. And his aircraft had hydraulic failures because all the flaps had fallen off under the high G load. And he barely recovered from that, and then had to limp this aircraft back to Bimbrook and put it on the ground. And that was just, the least of his problems. But anyway, he was a lovely guy. Failed my instrument rating once.
So he failed your instrument
He
rating?
failed mine. He was an instrument
Oh.
rating examiner, and he checked me out once, and I went to pardon me. He gave me a diversion to a civil airport, and we made an approach under QNH. I was used to making an approach under QFE, and I had forgotten to apply the airfield elevation. So I followed the ILS down, and when he said, "Okay, Nick, look up," I still had about 10 feet to go to my decision height, and there was the runway about 20 feet away.
Oops.
And he said, "Well, I'm afraid I'm going to have to fail you because you forgot to change your altimeter, or you did change about it. I forget what the error I'd made. Anyway, I forgot to apply the difference in airfield elevation to my approach plates.
So it was a fair evaluation.
Oh, absolutely. It was. We did the trip again next day on the pass. But he said, I was very impressed the fact that you kept the needles on the ILS, a manually flown ILS off a separate instrument, crossed until you were, literally on the runway. So
yeah, that's hard to do. You get in that close.
Anyway, it was fun. But he lovely bloke. Still keep in touch.
Well, Neil, in our live audience, that's a story we have to hear sometime. The next interview series?
Oh, yeah. If I could get him to tell it. I mean, he's told it enough times, so I don't see why he shouldn't tell me. But yes, I think
that'd be great. That'd be great. Yeah. All right. Well, I enjoyed that as always, and I think we can go ahead and resume taking on some more feedback from our awesome community. About 35 minutes remaining in the show. So let's, where do we leave off, Liz? Number 6. Okay, this is from Josh. Josh in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Yeah, it's been a while since I've been to Tulsa. I got to get back there. Hi there, APG crew. Hope everyone is well.
24 hours to Tulsa? Is that the same place?
Probably. Yeah, not sure. Liz seems to think so. Anyway, hi there. Hope everyone is well. This is an article regarding the lawsuit surrounding the Boeing 737 MAX crashes and how Boeing is defending themselves in court. It seems they are suggesting that because the crashes happened so quickly that there wasn't time for the passengers to feel pain. This seems an especially heinous defense, even for lawyers. I truly hope this turns into a PR disaster for them, and they will have to pay even more compensation to the families of the victims. And he gave us a link to 1mileatatime.com, and the headline is Boeing argues that the 737 MAX crash victims didn't suffer. And anyway, so we'll have a link to this, but I just highlighted the quote as reported by the Wall Street Journal. Boeing is trying to get out of paying compensation for suffering. Quote, Boeing attorney cited an expert who said that the 737 MAX victims died painlessly because the airplane crashed into the ground so fast that their brains didn't have time to process pain signals from their nervous systems. And it just goes on to say, this is beyond the pale here. This is, not.
We live in a different world to lawyers, and there's no doubt about it that they have to weigh up the good against the bad and try to find something good to weigh up, or something that might alleviate the pain of losing your loved ones would be very hard. But it's their job to do this. And as much as I find it as heinous as the next person, and I think our legal systems around the world could well deserve a dose of morality. These are the defense attorneys' jobs, trying to find ways to limit the penalties that Boeing will suffer as a result of this. So, to a certain extent, I'm saying it's their job. So,
Yeah. As horrific as that is, it's truth. And that's I agree.
I don't have any sympathy at all for that attitude, by the way. I much prefer the bit at the end, which was human factors, airspace, physiology. argued the following: whilst passengers undoubtedly perceive the flight as scary, humans have a tendency to hold on to hope and not expect the worst. Ultimately, it's impossible to know the subjective experience of each occupant. I think we can say quite happily that they had an awful time while they waited for their death.
I agree. Yeah, I think we should skip over that one, Liz. The one where we'd like to have our South Carolinian resident here with us when we discuss
the Kakalaki song.
Kakalaki song.
I definitely want to hear his test reaction to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll jump to number 8. Evan says, longtime listener, first time caller. I currently fly for Acme Junior, and since Acme has pretty much banished us to LaGuardia and JFK,
oh my God,
I
isn't
figured
Acme an awful outfit?
I know.
I don't think,
it's terrible.
I don't think I'd want to work for him.
Since we've been banished to LaGuardia and the JFK, I figured I'd have to write in to update Captain Jeff on the current LaGuardia procedures for runway 31. Sadly, since I've been at Acme Junior, the expressway visual 31 is no longer used.
What?
That's a shame. When I started a couple of years ago, the park visual 31 was the primary approach for 31, which, while still having a sporty turn, is less severe than the expressway was, from what I understand. And there were some waypoints we could load into the FMS to help our situational awareness. That might be why, when I saw that video of Graham's, that it looked like it wasn't that. It was kind of a not a big turn.
You did mention that it kind of brought you in on a different lineup.
Right. So maybe that's why that they weren't flying the expressway visual. They were flying something else. Let's see. On windy days, the localizer / RNAV 31 is still used when needed. And you're right, Jeff. You're not missing much not flying into LaGuardia anymore, although the new terminals are very fancy. I enjoy the show and keep up the great work. And this is from EA, Evan, and he's also an OB listener. That's why he's signed off with Echo Alpha, I guess I should say.
He did that just to annoy you.
I think so. But you know what? I love it. Please keep them coming.
Absolutely.
Let's see. Feedback number 9, Chris. Okay. Let's see. Dear crew, hope you're all well. I haven't left feedback for a while. Chris here. You may remember me as a provider of emergency internet hotspot at APG 500 in the UK.
Oh, he saved our skin that night.
Nick remembers him well. He says, I haven't written into the show in a jolly long time, so thought I'd drop a few words over. Still here, still listening. I had the opportunity recently to take a quick week-long business trip out to Sydney. A first time in Australia for me, and what a wonderful place. Captain Nick, I can see why you speak so fondly of it. Less about that and more about the travel, though. I booked myself and my colleague onto the Emirates A380. What a magnificent aircraft. I've flown a number of times on the A380 before. However, what never ceases to amaze me is just how quiet a place to be it is. I'm not sure if this should be considered a definitive measurement. However, my Apple Watch was reporting a consistent 64 decibels in the cabin. Well, that is quiet. I'd be interested if anyone else gets a measure on their watch in different aircraft types, but I can imagine they are significantly noisier. Having flown to Singapore on the A350-900 in August of last year, the A380 seemed notably more hushed. You could easily have a conversation with your seat neighbor during takeoff. Not that I did, as mine slept through it. Okay. I noticed on takeoff that the engine spooled up to about halfway, then takeoff thrust, but then increased again a third time as speed started to build up. I thought that this was the pilots up front going, oh crap, we're really heavy, floor it. But it wasn't until I had dinner with a good friend and fellow APG community member Adam Catling last week that he mentioned that the A380 apparently has some kind of a system that only applies the full takeoff thrust at 35 knots once airflow is stabilized through the engines. Clever stuff. You were talking about the old Airbus A300 in a recent show. Did you know that the last Airbus A300 rolled off the production line after the first A380? Side note, I think there are some passenger variants of the A300 still flying, perhaps Mahan Air in Iran. Not many, though. They are mostly freighters now. We had an interesting moment during the second leg from Dubai to Sydney. I was sat in the premium economy cabin at the front of the aircraft on the lower deck adjacent to the second exit. And there's an LCD screen that shows who's calling when someone calls the flight attendants, etc. The damn thing was binging and bonging all flight, but about 40 minutes out from landing, there was a new type of bing, a very subtle bing, 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 3 chimes in a slightly higher pitch. I looked at the LCD annunciator by the exit and noticed it said smoke detected or something like that. One of the flight attendants gasped, said, "Oh my gosh," under her breath, and disappeared into the galley directly behind me. And I heard talk of grabbing a fire extinguisher, and one of the crew had donned some pretty thick full-length rubber gauntlets. As I mulled over in my mind whether the sheer size of the A380 meant that we'd have a decent chance of making land before being fully ablaze, things thankfully seemed to calm down. I asked the crew once things had calmed down what occurred, and it transpired that someone had sprayed hairspray in the lavatory. That must have set off the smoke sensor, huh?
Yeah, I'm afraid it was either that or someone sneaking a quick puff of a cigarette.
Could be, yeah. They were surprised I had noticed anything, though, and asked if I was off-duty crew. The new Emirates Premium Economy product is nice. It has the smart automated window shades, not the 787 bin liner style ones where the glass slowly changes, but the electric window shades that go up and down between the window panes. They add a great ambiance to the cabin, except as I found when abused by the crew. We had a 6 a.m. departure out of Sydney, and as soon as we hit 10,000 feet, the flight attendant pressed a button up front and closed the blinds in the entire cabin. I immediately opened mine, and again he pressed the button and closed mine. He did this about 3 or 4 times, and each time I probably came across as passive-aggressive. I just hit the button, the open button once again. It's 6 a.m. and I'm not sleeping. Why would I want my window shade closed? Good point. On a different note, I enjoyed the conversation on a recent show about volunteering CPR skills if you aren't a medical professional, but if there is a medical emergency on board an aircraft. A bit about my background. I'm a police officer of 15 years, but recently made a career change and now work for a London-based ethical technology company that I had worked with for the past 3/4 of a year, or 3 to 4 years. I'm not sure. What do you mean? 3/4 of a year, you think? Oh, 3 to 4 years. Okay. In my previous role, though I've also stayed on in the police in a voluntary capacity. Whilst not directly related to the feedback, a big part of what we do is around alerting ordinary people with basic life support skills to incidents of cardiac arrest in their immediate vicinity using our smartphone app, which has a direct connection to ambulance control rooms. It doesn't take a doctor or paramedic to begin basic CPR or use an AED. And by crowdsourcing these basic but valuable skills when needed, you can keep people alive until they get advanced life support from more highly trained professionals. I delivered this app across my police force, and my colleagues in blue over the past 12 months have delivered successful CPR on 48 occasions prior to arrival of an ambulance, having been alerted via the app. My take on the feedback, although I'm not, albeit I'm not a doctor, would be absolutely offer your skills. If you can see CPR is required, it can be physically exhausting, and having people there to rotate in is vital. If there are medically trained personnel, they may be in a position to provide more enhanced first aid care and manage airway, knowing that someone else can take over compressions. If it's a large aircraft, there may be enough trained crew, but every situation is different. Aircrew and airport staff are generally first aid trained, and there are AEDs at every other gate, and that's why you are 80% likely to survive a sudden cardiac arrest in Heathrow Airport, but only 9% on the streets of London, and that's what we aim to increase. We also do some other really cool stuff, such as providing people that dial 999, 911, 000, with the ability to live stream video and location data to emergency call takers whilst on the emergency call without needing an app, and probably save a life every day or every other day. This is a shameless plug, But if any other community members work in the police, fire, ambulance, EMS sector and want to know more, we operate globally, not just in the UK. Our website is, and I'll put the link in the show notes. It's basically Good Sam app, Good GOODSAMAPP.org, Good Samaritan app or GoodSamApp.org, or www.instant.help if it's easier to remember. I'll happily chat aviation and tech with anyone over a virtual coffee or beer. Jeff, please feel free to share my email if anyone would like it. Okay, so we have his email address as well, Chris Postal, or Postal. I've just renewed my Class 1 medical, so with a bit of luck, I'll find some time and headspace this year to get back in the air. All the best, Chris Postal, longtime listener, patron, community member, internet provider, procurer of red Audi TTs for Captain Nick. Oh, really? He had something to do with you procuring that
Almost
red Audi,
yes.
huh? Okay.
He knows all the wheezes to try and get the price of your car down. So he
Wow.
put me in touch with a website called, I think it's Get the Drive, or Drive the Price, one of those. It was
Drive the price up? No, that's not.
Yeah, probably. Anyway, with his help and negotiating skills, we knocked a good £6,000 or £7,000 off the price of a new Audi for me, which helped a great deal. And of course, he saved us the UK end of the 500th show when he stepped up with his mobile phone and gave us an internet link that we were desperately trying to generate.
Wow.
So lovely man. Thanks again for your help there, Chris, and for your help with the car. Appreciate that. He was busy buying a Volvo at the time, I think. So I'm just wondering if he still got that, or is he moved on from there?
Chris is definitely a critical part of our APG community.
Oh, most certainly.
Sure.
Yeah, very good. I
I'm
was
sorry, go
going to
ahead.
just to mention a little bit about the issues with the engine. It's not really an issue, but the difference in noise levels when you're on a takeoff, and it's all to do with stability of air going into the engine. And Rolls-Royce say that with a tailwind or a crosswind over a certain limit, it depends entirely on the aircraft type and the engine, exactly which engine. You can end up with disturbed airflow going through the fan at certain RPMs. What can happen is the fan blades, which are pretty big blades, they can start up a resonance, they can flutter, and they can disturb the airflow into the core of the engine, which is where all the work is done. That's where the compressors and the flame tubes and the turbines are. So it's quite important to get your acceleration of the engine right. Now, when I was flying the 340-600, 330 had the same problem, I think. We had various different throttle techniques to avoid the danger areas, but effectively it meant going to a stabilized position and advancing the throttle at a certain rate, and then achieving your flex takeoff position at the right speed. But nowadays they can program the FADEC, the fuel and digital engine control. I think
Full authority digital engine
thank you.
Control. Yeah.
Oh, well done.
I
Jeff.
actually got an acronym right. That's
You're a
like ding,
good
ding,
man.
ding. I should hit some bells.
Well done. Yeah. So they can program the FADEC to do the correct acceleration technique for you, and it usually requires avoiding a keep out zone. So there's a, for example, with a 330 with a Rolls-Royce engine, a Trent 500, say, might have a keep out zone from 60 to 74% of N1 being the fan speed, 100% being max speed. And that's you don't want the engine to linger in that zone. So you might be required to just push the throttle straight up smartly to flex position to let the fade out take control. You might need to do it manually, but the engine will certainly, depending on the airflow, will alter its acceleration rate to ensure that it sort of moves through that keep out zone correctly to prevent fan instability. I'm just reading here from their website where they say during the progressive application of the takeoff thrust after the stabilization set, and that's a relatively low power set, not idle, but you advance the throttles to the stabilization step, and that gets the engines part way up to power and make sure they're all at equal power so that when you advance them, you don't get an unequal thrust level that will veer you off the runway. The flight crew should ensure that the levers are advanced continuously and simultaneously. Moving the thrust levers too slowly may lead to asymmetric engine acceleration if one thrust lever is moved outside of the keep out zone before the other. The keep out zone is just a small region and it is only required at low speed with a strong crosswind or tailwind and only during the takeoff. So it's a very specific area that needs the pilot's attention. But it's just one of the myriad of techniques you have to learn as a pilot, depending on what aircraft type you're flying and what stage of development they're in, because they change year by year, in fact, month by month sometimes as things develop in the technology of the aircraft you're flying.
Let me tell you about my experience with techniques in spooling up and that kind of thing. This is before the magic electronic digital computer systems that control all that stuff on your fancy engines. This is the 727, the three-holer. We got three holes in the back, three engines. The two on the either side of the tail, they're have lots of airflow around them, and they don't have big ducts.
Were your aircraft called ladies? I mean, did you refer them to as she?
I don't remember. I think most of the time we did, but I know when you use the term three-holers, I see where you're going with that. Anyway, we'll say the sometimes I don't know why we called her the Studebaker. But anyway, so the third engine, they're all three, on the same level, but because the center one has a big giant fuselage in front of it, it's hard to get air into that. So they had to create that S duct, which is on top, the fuselage, right where the vertical stabilizer starts. Actually, it's part of the stabilizer's vertical stab structure. And then, of course, it's an S duct, so the tubing goes down and then goes straight into the number 2 engine, the center engine in the back. Well, you can imagine these Pratt & Whitney JT8Ds were pretty, they're lower bypass fans, and so it's kind of hard to disrupt airflow on them. But if you are getting your air through an S duct, you can see that there might be a problem, especially if you have higher crosswinds, and that is indeed an issue on that airplane. You could easily compressor stall that number 2 engine, that center engine. And so what we had, our technique was if the crosswind was anything more than just a couple of knots, we would bring the number 1 and 3 engines up to a certain point and start our takeoff roll. So we get some forward motion and more air going into that S duct. And then once we got to a certain point, we'd slowly bring in that center thrust lever and align it with the 1 and 3, and then move all 3 of them together to the final takeoff thrust position. But if you weren't careful about that and you just cavalierly, just slam that number 2 engine throttle up, I know a lot of you people are going, that's not a throttle. Well, that's what we called it. If you put it up there too quickly, boom, it gets your attention. It makes a big noise and people are not happy to hear that sound. And you have to usually abort and, okay, let's try this again. But anyway, so that was our technique with the 3-holer.
Interesting. A consideration for us was that whenever we had a crosswind, we would try to do rolling takeoffs because the idea was to get forward moment with smooth air going into the engine before you demanded any great acceleration out of the engine. So wherever possible, we're trying to do rolling takeoffs.
Yeah, it's definitely a thing. All right. Thanks, Chris, for your feedback, and thanks for being there when we needed you. I mean, talking about
absolutely.
that 500th episode, that just brought memories of all the technical hurdles that we had to go through. Yeah, and we had all these little minor miracles happening all over the globe.
Yeah, someone was looking after us there. Someone was up there, including Chris.
Okay. Micah says, was there a similar technique with the L1011? I was thinking about that when I was thinking about what I was going to say about the 727, Micah. I was thinking, I don't really ever recall any kind of a technique like that with the L1011. And I think mainly it's because, yes, it also had that same kind of an arrangement with the engines. Well, at least the center engine. Obviously, the 1 and 3 engines were on the wing of the L1011. The middle engine, number 2 in the back, again, was the same kind of thing where it was at a lower level, so you had to have that S duct direct the air down into the intake of the number 2 engine. And I think that there wasn't a problem with it is because that S duct on the L1011 was like a giant sewer pipe. I mean, it's like, I don't know what the diameter of the thing was, but I do remember we had a field trip when we were in training on the L1011. They took us over to the tech operations, and we went into the hangar, and they had some scaffolding and everything else up above in the tail area, and we got to look, and I think they had the number 2 engine extracted, so you could just see the intake, and you could see how it would go down and then out, and you could see pretty clearly how huge this giant duct was. It was literally like a large city sewer pipe. I don't know how many. It had to be at least, 8 feet in diameter or something. Maybe that's too big. Maybe not that big, but it was huge. It was very impressive.
Line dance down it?
Yeah, it would have been fun, except I don't think that there was anything to catch you on the other end if you had kind of did a slip and slide or something.
I'm guessing then that the DC-10 probably had it right because they didn't need any.
No, they didn't need any kind of ducting at all. Yeah, it was just, although it wasn't as elegant, in my opinion.
No, I agree. It looked like it was always going to fall off.
Yeah, like I'll just slap an engine on it.
That's right.
In fact, I think that's kind of what they did.
Yeah,
we actually need 3 engines, so let's just put one right there, and that'll work. Anyway, okay. We can do that, and I'd also like to just quickly cover the thing about the hippopotamuses. Okay, number 12. Alan says, "Hi, guys and gals. As an ex-airline guy, BA spokesman, etc., and private pilot, I have been catching up with your excellent episodes, including APG 404 and Hippos on the Runway at Dire Dawa. I don't know how you say that. Causing an Ethiopian DH-8D a bit of a bother on takeoff. After some confusion, Captain Nick established the plural of hippopotamus can be either hippopotamuses or hippopotami. However, you should be aware that for centuries this has been the subject of much controversy, even within the zoological community.
Oh, brilliant.
Indeed, way back in the mists of time, legend has it, a zookeeper wrote to his friend at a breeding establishment, "Dear Fred, please send a hippopotamus. P.S. Send another." All best wishes in proving that the old ones are the best or worst.
That's great.
Alan Murray from West Sussex.
He didn't want to commit himself to one or the other. I love it.
Alan is from West Sussex in the UK.
Oh, okay. Well, that's not far from me.
Oh, you guys should get together and talk about hippopotami.
Well, we could indeed. Yes, for sure.
And then number 17, we're gonna end it with this one. Phil Timmer He's an Acme 737 first officer. He writes in and says, like most listeners, I'm always thoroughly entertained by Captain Nick's recollection of his amazing aviation career. Between flying gliders as a young lad to his RAF, RAAF training and sorties, bookended by his lengthy airline career, I can't help but think that a great autobiography is in order. Nick is so well-spoken, as most Brits seem to be, somewhat frustratingly to an American, that I can't help but think a book and self-narrated audiobook are in order. Captain Nick, what do you think? Apart from my home printer, I couldn't help you publish it, but I think it's worth committing to the annals of history. Take care.
Well, I kind of think I have, really, because all those plain tales are out there for anyone to dip into. And the idea of giving myself more homework.
You need more things to do, Nick.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't really appeal. So I appreciate it. And you're not the first to make the suggestion.
Nope. No, he's not.
I think I'm going to leave it as it currently is, because it's great for the show if people enjoy it and they want to be able to pick and choose amongst them which ones they want to listen to. Then I think that's brilliant.
And I was, early on when Nick was doing these, he kind of asked if it would be okay if we actually played these on the Airline Pilot Guy show. And I went, "Are you kidding me?" Yeah, it's okay. And in fact, I was trying to encourage Nick to make this a separate podcast. And he goes, "No, I'm happy to, to just have it on the show every once in a while." And I went, "Okay, I'm very honored that you're thinking that way, and we're very honored and entertained to hear these."
Well, that's ever so kind of you, Jeff. Because if you are just interested in catching up on old ones, you can access it as a podcast on its own without having to try and find it in a show. So you can do that on the website through the Plain Tales page, or you can just search for Plain Tales on any podcast app or even Spotify, and you can find the stories there, just the stories without the rest of the show.
Right. We made it a separate feed so you can subscribe just like you do to any podcast out there. So,
although I'm not as good as Jeff is about getting them out on time. So I had a little flurry about a month ago, and I'm probably about 4 or 5 behind now. So they're a bit in arrears.
Yeah, that's partly my fault. Because I kind of go, well, I'll upload that, because I got to, upload them to the server, and they got to get injected into the feed that we just talked about. And I'm guilty of kind of getting lazy about it. And then Nick will kindly say to me, "Do you have any more Plain Tales that I can work on?" Because he adds more material to them on our website. And anyway, so I'm probably several behind again. So I'll try to catch up. But yeah. Anyway, so check it out. If you want to learn how you can subscribe to the Plain Tales, just go to the website, airlinepilotguy.com/Plain Tales, I think. But it's on the menu up there. So check it out. And with that, we're going to talk about the website right now because we're wrapping up the show. AirlinePilotGuy.com. Again, Plain Tales is a separate page. We have a podcast page. And again, if you're looking for those first 100 episodes, there's a link there that you can listen to the old ones. And we got the APG library, merchandise, a blank calendar, and other stuff there. And so please check it out, airlinepilotguy.com. And we are also on social media, the social meds, I like to call them.
That's on Facebook is our first port of call. And there you just have to look for Airline Pilot Guy, all one word. And then Twitter is the next port of call you might be interested in, and that we're at APG Crew. And that's very similar to the Instagram pages where I stick each week the new artwork that we've produced, and that's APG Crew again.
It is. And of course, we also are on Slack, and we're going to have Hillel tell you all about Slack. Oh, he's in Copenhagen. Okay. We got a special mic there. Hello. How's Copenhagen?
Okay, but I'm dripping wet.
Yeah, what does that have to do with anything? I don't know. Anyway, why don't you come over here and tell us all about Slack?
APG listeners, please join us on our Slack team. Slack is a communication, coordination, and sharing platform that works on your mobile, laptop, or browser. On Slack, we share news and ideas, we suggest episode and plain tales topics, we plan events and meetups. To get into the Slack team, please email me at slack@airlinepilotguy.com. That's SLACK, Sierra Lima Alpha Charlie Kilo @airlinepilotguy.com, or send me a tweet with your preferred email address to @Hillel, and I'll send you an invitation. That's Hillel, spelled Hotel India 11 Echo 1, and see you in Slack.
Thanks a lot, Hillel. Say hi to all the Nielsen's. Got a lot of Nielsen's there in Copenhagen.
Does he?
Yeah, I mean that's where they're from.
I've never come across another one.
Yeah, well, it's probably a good thing. And also, we'd like to thank our producer, Liz Piper. Come on, Liz.
well done, Liz.
Make yourself.
Thanks very much.
There you are. Liz is just a gem and a big part of our crew. And thank you so much for all the work you do every week.
I didn't remind you about your recorder today, guys. That's my bad. I'm sorry.
What's that?
I'm sorry I didn't remind you about your recorders. That's
Oh, hey, that's okay. I have a way of getting that audio.
We only missed half an hour. It wasn't bad.
Yeah, it wasn't bad, and yeah, not a problem. I've done this before. Trust me, I've gone entire episodes without recording it.
Thanks to Nick.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, that's about it. We'll thank again our live audience. You guys and gals mean so much to us. We do appreciate you. We appreciate all of those out there who are part of our Coffee Fun cadre, our Coffee Bar Club. And just thanks for listening and telling people about our show. And we hope you enjoy it. I know that we what's that? Feedback is also something that Liz loves. And with that, we hope that we see you again next week. And until then, we're wishing you clear skies, unlimited visibility, and tailwinds. Talons, Douglas.
Bye, everybody.
Cheerio. Bye-bye.
The new people are probably going, Talons, Douglas, what the heck does that mean?
Yeah, that needs the old explanation, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Translate, Jeff. Translate.
Every once in a while, I should probably say why we do that or why I do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Oh, recorders off.
Recorders off.
All right, sir.
Now, Jeff, before I forget to do this, Pip wanted me to let you know.
Doing it again. Can you hear me?
Hello?
I can hear everybody,
hear you.
although Liz is a bit quiet.
That's that better?
That is so weird.
Yes, that's a lot better.
Jeff?
That's so weird.
Can you
I don't know why it does that. When I turn off the recorder, all of a sudden you can't hear me anymore.
We can hear you.
I can hear you.
Yeah.
But could you hear me before when I said, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's
I
you
can't
who
hear
couldn't
myself.
hear you.
Okay. Well, you know what I could do? I can hit stop again.
Yeah.
I still can't from my headset. Oh, now I can.
There was a little blip there. There was a little.
Okay, now I hear
There was a
myself.
little hiccup, and then you
Okay, I'm back to normal. Well, as normal as I can be.
Yeah. Anyway, just
Takes
before
some
we
doing.
move on here,
Thanks.
Pip wanted me to let you know, Jeff, that he flew into Atlanta from Heathrow the other day on Virgin, and he missed you by 10 minutes. You were just flying out to Lexington, and he missed you by 10 minutes at the gate.
Man.
Yeah.
That's too bad. I wish I'd known that. Well, maybe some other time, Pip.
Next time, yeah.
Yeah. All
Okay,
right.
so titles and stuff for you, Nick.
Yep.
We've had a
Please.
lot of contributions from the chat room. I'll give you my pathetic ones first, and then we'll go to the chat room. But the ones I had were Flying High, which were our two guys in the air bike. They were flying high.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And then I had Thrust Techniques. So you might do something
I'll bet
with
that's
that.
interesting. to
Now, Super Fred Driver, I think was it Super Fred Driver? Who did this one? They had another thrust thing. They had thrust, thrust
slow, avoid stalls.
exactly.
I got that.
And then Tim Van Ram had a whole bunch of them.
Mm-hmm.
California Dreaming, which was about Jeff dreaming about being in an airliner when he was a little boy in
Ah.
California. Recorders on and off, which I don't want to use because that just points out the error of our ways.
No, it's not your fault. It's our fault for not remembering.
Yeah,
I
we're
mean,
not
'cause
using that one, Tim.
we're the operators.
Illegal pilot. So I guess he was referring to the gentleman who's under remand out there in Australia. But anyway, that was a suggestion. Crossing runways code 3. Now, I'm not really sure. I think it's about an ambulance and, them crossing the runways in Baltimore or something.
Mm-hmm.
Explain yourself, Tim Van Ram. But anyway, negative G's. Now, negative G's was in the tragic accident, so I don't know what you'd do with that. Oh, sorry, Tim saying it was recorders off on pitot
Tubes off.
Okay, sorry, I missed that second bit there. And I had one more that came from Mo's input was no regrets. So, that was everybody saying, Mo, go do it so you don't have any regrets.
Right,
I don't know if any of those work for you, Nick, but that's what we've got.
Thank you very much.
That was a little weak, thank you.
Yeah. I mean, none of them actually leap out at me, but
no, I know. Maybe Mid-Journey will find one fascinating. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
A title generator.
I mean, the problem is I have to think of a visual representation.
I know, exactly. I know, and
these.
I understand that, and none of these are very visual, I'm afraid. So.
Okay.
Yeah, but.
I like flying high.
Yeah, that one might work.
Spaced out, like eyes,
Yeah.
like on
googly
drugs.
eyes, kind of, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Possibly.
Yep. That might also go with California Dreaming.
Flying high in California Dreaming.
Yeah.
Tim, have you ever seen We're? Is it called We're the Millers? I think the show with it was a comedy movie, and they were in an RV, and they went down to Mexico to
I know the movie.
Pick up some drugs. I think it was a drug run, and he said, "No regards" was a funny tattoo on one. I didn't want to have no regards.
When you wake up the next morning and look at your tattoo, and it's
I love it.
Boy.
Oh, that was a funny movie.
That's a good one. Anyway, you should be watching that on your RV when you get it. Jeff.
I've watched it a couple of times actually. It's pretty funny. Pretty funny. I like the actor. Can't think of his name right offhand, but and Jennifer Aniston. I love her.
Yeah.
I just think she's
every guy loves her. I
love her.
Loves her.
She's nice to look at.
But she's also very funny. She's a really
She
good
is funny.
comedian. Like she's a very
She really
funny
is.
person. Yeah. No, she's
Yeah.
good. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. Always great to have you in the chat.
Yes, it always is. Thank you so much. You
Brilliant.
contribute
Yes, great
a lot to our
contributions.
show.
That's
You really do.
Yep.
And no, I'm not going to pay you.
Yeah.
Jason,
Well, actually,
Jason
it helps
Sudeikis,
us along
yeah.
enormously.
Well, yeah, it really does. I guess I could pay you the scale, the APG crew scale.
That's true.
I
Don't
don't
give them
know.
any more than we
Crew
get.
scale. Golly.
Yeah, we get paid in fish scales.
Oh yeah, that's it. Jason
Jason
Sudeikis.
Anyway, bye everybody. We'll see you next time.
Yeah,
Yep.
Looking forward to it already.
We love you. Bye.
Cheers.